All right, thank you very much. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Irvine International Academy board meeting for starting off the study session at 5:20 officially kicking off, and then we'll have a board meeting planned right now for 7 o'clock. The date today is Tuesday, September 17, 2024. We do have one board member teleconferencing in. His location is 2275 Marsant Avenue, Corona, California, 92882, United States. We'll identify him in the roll call, but want to make sure the address is clear. Okay, roll call, starting with Miss Molly Chang.
Here.
Mr. Felipe Delgado.
Here.
Fred Freeman is present. Mr. Doug Hewson.
Here as well.
Thank you, and you are at the teleconference location noted.
Correct.
Mr. David Sun.
Present.
Mr. Miller Zhuang. Is absent. Okay, so for today, we have two big components to the meeting today. We have the study session, which will begin. We'd like to welcome those that are in attendance and also those from the public as well that are attending. Thank you very much. I will defer to Ms.
We need
Dr.
to approve the agenda.
And then we're going to go into it
And
for
then
the
we'll
items
go
for
into
discussion.
Community input on the study session, if anyone has any,
Okay.
and then we'll go into the actual study.
Okay, all right. Okay, so approval of the agenda for the study session of the Irvine International Academy Board of Directors on September 17, 2024. It's recommended the Board of Directors approve the agenda for the study session of the Irvine International Academy Board of Directors on today, September 17, 2024. Is there a motion? All right. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, David. All in favor? I have to do roll call
Yeah, do
since
roll call,
David
yes,
is,
that
or
is-
Doug is calling in. So roll call, Molly,
Yes.
Felipe,
Yes.
I'm a yes. David,
Yes.
Doug? Can't hear you, Doug.
Yeah, I'll abstain from the vote. I missed that meeting. Sorry.
Got
No, you're approving the agenda for today.
Oh, the agenda. I'm sorry. I thought it was already the minutes. Yeah, I approved the agenda as stated.
Okay. Miller is not in attendance. Okay. It's approved. Next item, community input on agendized items. The public may comment on items listed on the agenda for the study session of the Irvine International Academy Board of Directors on September 17, 2024.
We don't have any for the study session.
Okay. Next item, items for discussion, strategic planning and goal setting regarding growth and expenditure.
Okay, so we're gonna have a kind of a more of a discussion tonight and kind of input from everyone, talking a little bit about our I shared, but you already shared. Talking about our what the board's thoughts are about expansion and growth moving forward and what that might look like for us. So some of our objectives, identify board priorities for growth, discuss possible growth scenarios. Then if we come up with a growth scenario that we want to explore or to perform a SWOT analysis on those, determine some long and short-term goals for expansion. I don't know if we're going to get through all of this, but we're going to try to get through as much as we can. And then create timeline for any goals that we come up with, and then discuss how we can achieve those goals in terms of looking forward to any growth and expansion. So first thing that I thought that we would do is just kind of talk a little bit about what are some priorities that the board has in terms of looking forward towards growth and expansion. So what are some ideas that you have? We can, I mean, this is more of the brainstorming at first. And then we can kind of look at those priorities and kind of ranking those. But for right now, and I'm gonna have Betsy maybe take some notes. And actually, you could probably just write them down and then we can talk about them. Or you could type them in.
I can like type on like just like a regular Google Doc.
Yeah, that works. So putting it out there, anybody have some ideas or priorities or things that they've been thinking about in terms of expansion for the organization? I know I've talked to you guys all about it.
Yeah.
So don't make me call you out.
Anyone want to volunteer comments at this point?
I'll start. So when you say growth, I mean, you mean growth in just the school in general or bigger picture?
Could be both.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with the bigger picture a little bit, because this has always been on my mind and I brought this up before. You know, our kids, all our students go through from TK all the way to 8th grade. And I always wondered, what do we have for them after 8th grade? And I've talked to the board before you guys were all here, is the possibility of having a high school for them to go to, right? Because we give them all this promise, right? We give them all this education. And if we want to continue that, where is it they can go with it, right? And we got kids, 7th, 8th grade, we have 8th grade too.
We do, we have
7th, 8th grade,
15 of
two 8th graders. What is for them after? Once they graduate from 8th grade, do they just distribute out to the other high schools, which is a possibility? And my thought was there a place for them to go, which would be IA high school kind of thing, not necessarily on this campus, it would be off campus, that kind of thing. So I always thought that that would be something we would look into. As a possibility, you know, that was my, when you talk about growth, yeah, that's growth. It's great to have other campuses like other IA elementary or middle school campuses. But right now, next year, we need somebody, some place for them to go. Those students, maybe not so much the 8th graders now, the 7th graders, you have full 7th graders.
With one class of seventh graders.
Yeah, so it will be 8th and then next year they'll be, freshmen. Is there a place for them to go? But I've always thought that that would be a priority, next thing, not just a, I'm sure there's programs within our school we could still do, but for me, big picture. That was it. Then beyond that would be other campuses or other schools similar to the one that we have, whether that's dual immersion, English, Spanish, or English, Chinese, or whatever that would be, then that would be the next step. So that was my house.
So one thing I think we should think about is, you know, where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years type thing, right? But 5 years is more strategic, this is closer. And then it's, what are the priorities that we need to put in place in order to get there? So I wonder if we can open up that idea, right, as mentioning high school, and if we think about high school based on just the preliminary research that I've done, we'll need hundreds of kids, 400, 500 kids to be able to support a high school that's competitive with other high schools in the area, the programming, the teachers are specialized, right? I mean, it's a different beast and maybe the requirements are more strict and stringent, you know. But how do we go from where we are now, right, from 58 graders to be able to actually feed and funnel into a high school? And so I'm
Yeah, so that's kind of where we're gonna go next in
Yeah.
our conversation, is talking about what those scenarios look like and what they'll kind of need to, what we would need to build those different scenarios.
Yeah, but so my question is for the priorities.
So we could work backwards from there.
Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to figure, you know, how we would bridge to get from where we want to go from where we are now.
So basically, there's a couple of different scenarios that were brought up actually by Felipe just right now. Some of them are moving into a standalone middle school. We have middle school right now, but it's on our current campus. And so do we look at trying to move middle school onto a separate campus so that it allows for us to expand elementary school and makes middle school a separate school? Another one would be, do we have another, dual immersion TK through 8? Another Mandarin dual immersion TK through 8? Do we have a Spanish dual immersion TK through 8? And then the creation of a high school or a 6 through 12 school. Most likely, the next steps would probably involve moving, because before we could have a standalone middle school or high school, we would need to start with a standalone middle school in order to be able to have the size that we would need and the capacity, the number of students that we would need in order to have a viable high school. Right now, we have 15 8th graders and I think 27 7th graders. So even if our 7th graders were to move forward, and say we opened up a 9th grade, not next year, but the year after, with just 27 students, it would be very difficult to house a lot of different programs. We would almost have, not the ability to really compete in sports or a lot of different academic competitions. Our electives would be very, very limited, just based on the fact that teacher credentialing is an issue. When we talk about having diverse electives, all of those electives have to be taught by teachers who are credentialed in that area. So if you think of having 1 or 2 classes, even if we went all the way down from 6th grade, 2 6th grade classes, 2 6th grade classes, 2 7th grade classes, an 8th grade class, and a 9th grade class, we would still be very limited in the number of things that we could offer for students. Even looking at leveling our Mandarin classes, and Tiffany and I were talking about this today, it's difficult for us to level them based on anything but grade level now. Otherwise, we would have 15 different levels of Mandarin, and each one would have 3 or 4 students, and we wouldn't have the staffing to be able to cover that throughout the day. So when we kind of plan backwards, if we say even like a target number of, say, a middle school of 500, that would provide us with enough capacity to be able to have a 9th grade class of about 100, 120 students. And that would allow us to be able to have things like electives and sports and other academic programs that would be somewhat similar to a small high school close to that. So if we kind of looked at that being sort of the target of being able to tack on a 9th grade class, most likely we would need to build our middle school up to be around, say, nice round number of like 500 students in the middle school in order to have enough for a high school. So any questions or thoughts on that?
So let's do middle school first.
So then.
What's the big deal? Yeah, that's my idea. We work to focus on a middle school campus, right? Is this campus for TK through 6 or what?
Depends on how we want to
Yeah, how you
set up
do
our
that.
middle school, but, I know a lot of the Irvine schools are TK through 6 and then they have 7, 8. So it just would depend on how we wanted to configure that.
Yeah.
We don't have to necessarily follow the text. There's a lot of middle schools that are 6 through 8.
We start with that. For off campus, or I think say off campus, but a middle school.
Mhm.
Middle school. That's more robust. Right now, our middle school is 17.
Well, technically, right now, we took it because of credentialing issues, we took it all the way down to 5th grade. So students are kind of swapping classes and sharing teachers and things all the way down to 5th grade. We've seen some issues with that going all the way down to 5th grade already. So it would be good to, one thing that we are definitely looking at is pulling 5th grade out again next year and making 5th grade part of elementary school. So it would be looking at, do we want to do a middle school that's 7, 8, or do we want to do a middle school that's 6, 7, 8? But either way, we're gonna pull 5th grade. We're gonna pull 5th grade out of the middle school, mix.
that will also depend on the location. Because the campus does support a middle school, and depending on how big that middle school is, how big the campus is. Cost.
Yeah.
If you know, get a media position, there will be a brain. I just want, the large part, I really agree with, Felipe's, the suggestions and, his thoughts. I think, for, to the extent you wanna make a long-term plan, you basically, it's strategic planning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, number one, I think we, on board members and, administration, I think that basically, the first thing discussed is the kind of the position, right? How do we position IIA in the long term? We're gonna position ourselves to be the leader in, Mandarin, English, bilingual program, all the way to high school. And if so, to what extent, at a high school stage, how would this help the kids? Because eventually they're gonna have to apply for college regardless, okay? Private or public. Okay, this, to what extent we can help them to apply, to get into college and eventually to help them with their long-term career. So that's number one. Because really high school is a long shot. Once you get to, everybody know, you get to senior year, everyone's busy with applying for college. Mandarin will be really, really instrumental to their application. We don't know. My answer is probably not. Because you take a look at all the top notches, because nobody really take Mandarin into consideration.
Yeah, I think for high school, really what the colleges are going to be looking at are the rigor of our program.
Yeah, AP class
The
and,
AP class,
all
whether we're
the,
AP
yeah.
or IB, whether we have those rigorous electives, whether we have a wide variety of electives,
Sports.
rigorous class.
Yeah,
and
whether
sports,
or not they participate in any competition, all that.
Academic
Get an
competition.
academic competition, so, bottom line is, at that time, just feel the academic performance,
Mhm.
not a Mandarin. I would love to see Mandarin, we have a very strong Mandarin program all the way along, but practically, once you get into college, you really have the time to devote 50% of the time, or even 40%, or even 30% of the time to Mandarin. I really doubt.
It does help to get into
Right.
colleges, having that
It,
dual immersion
yeah.
background, but we need to make sure that we have a really broad.
And also we need a brand, because if we create a high school, I mean, the admission officer from Berkeley, from UCLA, from Stanford, they know, some of the schools, they know Sage, they know, okay, Irvine High, right? Northwood High. If we suddenly create a high school, they know, or IIA High. You gotta have a brand. And you got to excel in something, either science or something. Oh, they say, okay, IIA High School is really good in science, in something. Then we create a brand, our own brand. That's how we're gonna position ourselves, all the way. Instead of positioning them, position ourselves to be the strongest Chinese or Mandarin program plus English or reverse. I mean, that doesn't sell to the top, top-notch colleges, in my view. I'm not saying, the Mandarin program is not important, but at a high school stage, in my view, that's probably a less of a concern to the admissions. So we got to make sure, in addition to the critical mass, right? You don't have the critical mass, you're not gonna have the spots. Right, you have other programs, you're not gonna have it, just too small.
And usually in a usually you wouldn't have a dual immersion high school, you would have like an IB high school that focuses
Right.
on that language aspect and that global
Yeah.
international aspect of the high school versus, most of our kids
Right.
in the high school aren't gonna be doing a 50-50 model. They're more going to be looking at,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
in our scenario, high school would be probably more likely to be more focused on IB than AP because we do have more of a global
Right.
focus. But again, we would need to have the capacity to be able to have those classes and have a robust
Right.
program of this.
So if I were to suggest something, from, I'm also a parent, I have to think about my kids when they get to the stage of what's more important to them, academic performance. All right, some kind of sports, participate in some kind of sports. And competition in something, win something, you can get into top-notch schools. That's important for a lot of Chinese families. Very, very important. And so I wouldn't go too far saying, right now, let's plan for high school right now. It might be we're not ready. You don't have the critical mass and plus the need at that time is probably not Mandarin. So maybe middle school, that's what we need to create. Well, we take it step by step, then have a timeline. And see at what stage we have the critical mass, we can really pull off a high school. Right?
I think you're right. Okay, so let me clarify a little bit more. So when I talk about high school, it's not dual immersion. So it'd be high school, but it would have Mandarin studies, I'm gonna call it Mandarin.
We would have
It'd be
Mandarin as a
dual
language.
immersion.
as
Yeah,
part of that,
Mandarin
so yeah.
language, but advanced Mandarin language, right? Because the kids coming out of our elementary and middle school should have a quality Mandarin
Yeah.
understanding.
And you should be able to
That's right,
pass
from
the
yeah.
AP or the IB Mandarin.
With
test.
flying colors, they should be able to pass it. That's what I'm expecting. That's the standard that I want to see, that when they come out of here, they obviously can't go to university in Beijing, right? But they could not, maybe some of them, but they obviously feel, my vision is when they leave this school, they have a strong understanding of Mandarin,
Mhm.
right? So the middle school program is a little tougher, right? When it comes to, not so much the dual immersion, but that they have strength in speaking in Mandarin. And then, so if they were to move to a high school, they would be taking advanced studies in Mandarin language, Mandarin language, not necessarily dual immersion at that point. Because that's kind of what I'm envisioning. Now, that's big picture. Slow it, pull back a little bit. So the middle school is really our focus at this time. And that middle school should have a strong, dual immersion Mandarin, like with the goal that when they leave here, they have strong language skills for Mandarin, right? And better than other schools. That's what I want to see. Better than other schools, that they are, that's their strength. Like you said, the branding, right?
Yeah, the brand.
So when they walk out of here, the branding is, these kids have, not only have the dual immersion program, they accomplish that program, but their language skills in Mandarin stronger than others, right? Stronger than others. So they could move into a high school and go beyond that. So I'm gonna back up a little bit more. For that to be accomplished, before we can even accomplish all that, we have to be financially solid, right? And that's part of our problem right now. Back to that. So before that can even happen, that's the big picture, right? That's a real picture. That's a reality. We need to be more financially solid than we are, right? And we're on that path. We are definitely on that path, which is great. So that's gonna affect when all this is gonna happen, right? But right now, based on what you said, our focus should be in the middle school. What is the middle school, off campus, strong curriculum, dual immersion? It'd still be dual immersion, but the Mandarin language program needs to be better than most. So we're gonna walk out the door, that's our brand.
And also, prepare these kids, eventually if they get into high school, you have they come from IIA, like, IIA all the way to middle school, perhaps at that time we have high school. And, some of the schools have a very, good program like a Columbia, right? I'm not saying everyone, right? Columbia, and, you have a very strong, traditionally, you have a very tight, strong tie with Asian. With Asian, you have a very strong program with a lot of donation from Asian families to Columbia. You have Asian studies. So when you look at, the kids from IIA, that's a plus. And, some of the, several schools have these strong programs, and,
I
for,
would even take that down to it would be one of my goals to make sure that even all of our surrounding high schools
Right.
are recruiting our kids, because they think that our kids are the best kids, that they want to make sure that they go, and that
Right.
something that, we,
do that.
they do.
Right.
Actually, we had kids that were, we had a lot of high schools that recruited, OPA kids, even high schools that were not even in the area that would come down and do our college nights, recruit our kids to go to their high schools, because most high schools now are not, yes, you are zoned to go to a particular high school, but most of our high schools now are open enrollment. And so if you go in the open enrollment window, you can apply to go to any high school, even if it's not the one that you're actually zoned for. And so, so high schools want to have kids go through that open enrollment process. They want to have the best kids go through that open enrollment process and go to their schools. So,
I think that's my new goal. I never heard of that. Yeah, I never heard of that. I think it's my new goal for IIA. I want IIA to have that reputation, that high schools come to us and say. "Yes,
high
we
schools
want
want
you-
to do our,
They
our
wanna
high
bring
school
our
night.
kids
and
in.
they wanna bring our
They
kids
want to
in.
bring our kids in. And along with that, I want to see them to have the language skills in Mandarin. I'm looking right at you, Timothy. Language skills in Mandarin better than the other schools. Better than the other schools. Because I think that's the brain. That's what we want, right?
That's a one part of it.
Yeah.
Remember, when some, a lot of the families I know, they ask, hey, David, you're closely involved with IIA. So what's good about IIA? Very strong. Sometimes I don't overplay the dual language. I said, science is very strong. And math is very strong. To an Asian family, that's a huge, you ask, yeah. I mean, that's a huge consideration. They didn't expect. I said, hey, we only have 3 years of history. We already run the top in the school district. Yeah, to them, that's amazing. And, language is a no-brainer. Yeah, that's bilingual.
It would be nice if that third thing you say.
Yeah.
The third thing you say.
Right.
Is meant, their language.
Yeah, I said, no, that's a no-brainer.
So that's, and that's our brain.
So you have a strong science, a strong math, and process, yeah, you're a winner.
Is the middle school something that can be phased in where we're not,
So that's kind of, so if we have kind of narrowed it down to, let's talk a little bit more about the middle school pathway. For now being our goal, and Grant and I have had a lot of conversations about this, because that was, kind of where we were hoping we would go. Through this conversation.
I think I jumped the gun when I said high school. I jumped the gun when I said high school.
But I think if
There
we are
is-
looking in long-term goals,
Big
that,
picture.
yes, big picture goals, then we would want to be able to
For that
provide that
to-
education all the way through for our
For that to
students.
happen, you need a strong middle school.
But if we're looking at kind of shorter term, where do we go from here? I think that so kind of having that discussion then about what are our next steps in terms of how do we roll that out? Because I think to your point about being, completely
We're not there.
fiscally solvent,
We're almost-
we're almost there, and having some reserves. So if we're looking at moving off of this campus and creating a standalone middle school, there's some considerations. One, so right now we have about 70 middle schoolers, give or take, 75 middle schoolers, give or take. If we were to, because I'm starting about 39 for next year, if we were to look for a Prop 39 facility for those 70, or even if it was the year after, say, 90 kids, most likely we would share a campus with someone else. Because we wouldn't be able to take an entire campus. So it would sort of be how we started out here, just in a,
And then push them out.
and then basically start pushing them out as we go. So that would be one option would be to look at an available facility around, and both.
When you say around, I'm probably sticking you for details here that you have. But when you say around, you mean Irvine.
So that is also a question. I mean, that's what this whole night is about. It's kind of throwing all of those things out because there are probably more. So there are two open campuses in Irvine. We are on one, the other Mandarin Dual Learning School is on the other. Right now, those are the open Irvine campuses that really aren't being used by Irvine schools. There is some declining enrollment throughout other parts of Irvine that likely there will be more schools closing down in the future, that we could, nab up. There will be other schools closing down in other surrounding districts. Southback currently has an open campus that is being sought after by a couple of different schools. Two different charter schools are seeking to move into their open campus. Southback has one open campus. Southback, Portier.
Oh.
In Lake Forest, they have another, or Mission Viejo. They have another campus. And then Tustin will likely have a couple of open campuses. And Capitol will likely have a couple of open campuses. Now, if we're looking for middle school for here, it needs to be pretty good proximity, not necessarily Irvine. Irvine would be a bit easier,
Yeah.
but it does need to be in pretty close proximity, because if you're gonna talk about families dropping their kids off here and then having to drop their kids off in another site, it needs to be close.
That's what I'm thinking. That's gonna be a problem, for me. That'll be a problem for me right away. Although,
And so another option is if we take some time, become a little more fiscally solvent, and then we look at the property. And there's a lot of open commercial properties out there right now, that could work for a middle school. I went through this in my previous role, looking at different school sites and how to turn a commercial property into a school site. And there's a lot of loans out there. There's also certain areas, where if that area is considered a low income area, then we can actually get 75% of our property costs paid for by the state. So, so then that becomes much cheaper proposition or ability for us to have our own facility. But that takes money upfront, that we don't have right now. So that would be, so in order to do that, we would have to work towards then getting that, building that reserve up before we can do that. So, so those are kind of two options, that we could talk about.
Doug? Your thoughts?
You're
We
muted.
can't hear you.
I like all of what I'm hearing because it shows some great insight into what's ahead. Thank you, Amy, for framing out most of the opportunities or options that we have. I would say this, that when we look in the rearview mirror and we recognize our brief history and where we're at, what we have to offer and what makes us distinct and our proof of concept was always this, that we could develop a Mandarin and English immersion school that's a international flavor school with some distinctives with the Chinese culture, high parental involvement, and high academic rigor, including STEAM eventually, with also some of the arts. So a full, rich experience for students in a dual immersion environment where the expectation is by third or fourth grade, there would be the ability to know the Chinese character set, to speak, to write, all of this. And so we were there. That's what we did. And as a result, some others said, hey, it can be done. And so we've seen some others launch their schools as well. I don't know if most of you know this, but we had actually approached early on, before we came to Irvine and Orange County, we proposed the idea to Corona Norco Unified School District, whose superintendent at the time, Dr. Lin, said, that is a great concept and idea, but we don't need you. We think we can do it on our own. And then he watched us for 2 years and they did their own school. So we've got something that works, and it's a TK to 8 environment. So we're kind of good at that. And I think that we should take note of that. So if we wanted to pluck a cell out of our own skin and replicate it 20 miles away in another area where there's a high number of people that would want what we have, we probably would get a significant success. We probably would do well. And when we move into high school, and you heard some of Amy's thoughts, high school is a unique animal and it's an expensive animal. And I was chartered at one point to come in and rescue a high school that started probably 3 years too soon with the finances of the people who started it. And I think we could pull it off. If we wanted to do 9th grade, I think there's a formula for doing it and designing it on a dime and yet delivering super high value. But it would be a very unique high school. It would look nothing like Irvine High. To start looking like a mega school, which they all are mega schools now, you just can't compete on the same sports level. You can be niche, but you can't compete on the same sports level. There's just not possible. You compete against smaller schools. You do things like that. And you have to build 9th, then 10th, then 11th, then 12th. And when we start doing that, if it's our own students matriculating, then they'll have the Mandarin skills. If we're attracting other students, we're going to lose our distinctive. We just have to accept high school will not be a dual immersion environment that is producing strong Mandarin speakers. They won't learn it rapidly enough, in my opinion. Some can, but most will not. So I'll hit pause. I'm not saying where to go. That's just my reflection. But look at for a moment the success. We're now almost to the physical maximum capacity of our current building. That's a really good sign.
Yeah, we only have 2 classrooms left, so say 60 kids left to actually fit on this current campus. So
What about asking IUSD to expand the campus? Put more, I don't know what they call these trailers out there. What do you call them? Portables?
Portables, that's usually.
What about putting more, having them expand the campus?
We could try to ask them.
They certainly
I
have
mean,
enough,
we will,
they have enough real estate.
yeah, so we will likely be turning in Prop 39 for over the capacity of the school site. We're going to try. Which would mean that they would come back to us and we would need to come up with a way to fit those kids in, because they're required to give us space for however many kids that we can prove that we're going to have. So right now, we will definitely be able to prove that we can fill the school. We may be able to prove that we can fill it with 2 or so, maybe 1 or 2 classrooms extra with in-district students. So that would be part of what I was planning on doing, was this year feeling them out.
While you're feeling them out, so you can get those doors. I tease about that because we've had a long history of it.
Yeah,
Trying to get.
the doors are a tough one. I've been in other schools that don't have doors.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Oh, there's tons of them. Any school that was built in the sixties was built so that everyone is in one big happy room, very loud room, and there are no doors. So, so almost all the schools that were built in the sixties are built like that. And the problem is to make a change requires an upgrade or an update to all of our ADA components. So when we put on a door, they have to then basically make sure that every door around it then meets ADA compliance, at the standard it is today. So sometimes, like, a good example of this, we were just going to put a shade structure at one school that was going to be attached to the building. And in order to do that, because where the shade structure was going to be, there were bathrooms, we were going to have to do a $2 million bathroom renovation to put a $50,000 shade structure next to the building. So, so that's why IUSD is putting doors on.
That's fine.
Because it would cost them millions of dollars. to
Yeah,
put the
I'm
doors on.
just teasing about the doors, but the,
Just a little background.
Yeah.
That's why no doors.
well, we've been working on that since
The beginning.
the
Yeah,
beginning.
That's the beginning, and we're gonna keep working on it, but I'm not sure.
Oh, yes.
So I do have faith in IAA. I agree with what David mentioned about the academic, but the way I see it, the past 3 years, all the teachers working on, so I'm not worried about that. I think that's what we're striving for. That's our goal. And, so it's showing in the elementary level, it's going to be in the 7th, 8th grade level. So, I understand that, and I agree that we need to focus on the junior high, the middle school right now. But I still feel like there's a possibility for the high school. I didn't know about the number and, we made 400 and something, but I did a little bit of research because I know there are 2 schools in Irvine that a lot of parents want to send them, but it's too expensive.
I'll go check really quick.
They have TK to 12. One is the Pacific Academy and one is the Renaissance. So those, they're scored high and your kids came out to go to Ivy League school. Of course, they're private schools, so it's very expensive. But I don't know how many people do they have in the
And kind of to Doug's point, if we wanted to do a very niche high school, then we could do something smaller, but then we're just focusing on a smaller, set of things. Also in a private school, it's a lot that charges a lot. They can have classes of 8 or 6. We would have a hard time being able to staff that with our current, the way that we're funded, in a high school. So sometimes it's a little bit easier. I know, some of our surrounding really expensive, high performing high schools, they will have classes of, they might have an AP math, an AP calculus class that has 4 kids in it. Because they can afford to pay for that small amount of teachers. So it would also kind of be determined by how robust of a high school we want to be able to have, because we have to fall into those public school funding model, but more like private schools.
And I think another thing, parents, well, speaking Chinese and learning Chinese in the high school, I think over here by middle school, we're already down to 50-50, right? Or 37.
A little bit less, yeah. So we're 50-50 all the way through pretty much 5th grade, and then it does go down a little bit in high school, or in middle school, just because they move from class to class and they need to take all of those different subjects, and so it's more Mandarin as a, Mandarin language class and less getting all of that, those other core content areas.
Right, and I listened to some of our 7th grade, 8th grader, their level is quite high. So we're thinking about in terms of playing piano, you go to probably level 5. Then you're fine, you're on your own. You can pick up something and just excel. So I think our 6th grader, our standard right now, the way I see it, they, by the 6th grade, they're already at that level. So when they go to high school or middle school, they can work on other areas, writing, poetry and different things. So it will not affect their English, I think. Because it's gonna go down to 30 to 70%. So that's why I have faith in it. And I agree, we need to make people know that something special about this school. But I still like to see the high school, because I think small, that's another thing that a lot of parents are looking for nowadays. I was just talking to my friend here in mine, that her son is going to 8th grade. So she was saying that, just even Irvine is a good district, but she still hears a lot of terrible things going on in high school. So she was looking for us to learn in school. So I think safety nowadays is very important.
In the curriculum,
And even in-
see, in
even
a
in-
smaller school,
Yeah, a
I
smaller
can see the curriculum, what's going on every day with my kids, right? In a big school, who knows what's going on there? You go to Irvine High, and it's massive, it's a mega school.
Yeah, and I think it would
And I'm
be
not-
very difficult for us to get to like an Irvine high school size. I think 500 students would be one of the smallest high schools in the area. Because most of our surrounding high schools are, 2,000 or more
And
students.
when I said high school, my vision is not Irvine.
I mean, we're not.
Because
we're
we'll
not gonna
never
be
be
there
there.
one day.
I don't think we'd ever be that. But we could be more curriculum based than sports based and all those other opportunities. We could find a way to tie with Irvine Valley College and have courses
Yeah.
conducted together. We could be more education based than sports and those things. If they want, even our school, elementary school wise, some of these other elementary schools, man, I think their curriculum is 50-50 sports and your curriculum kind of thing. Ours is not. Ours is, there's a lot of, education going on here when it comes to curriculum, right? And it shows. Then that, even the language program shows, right? Kids 6th, 7th grade, they're speaking pretty good Mandarin. The ones who went through the whole course, or at least most of the school, right? They started in kindergarten, they made it all the way to 6th, 7th grade. They're, along with their parents supporting them and things like that. By the time they get up there, they're pretty good. And so when I say high school, that's what I'm thinking. Smaller high school, more core curriculum, that kind of thing. More tied to Irvine Valley College, that kind of thing. So that's wrong, but, hold it. Let's go back to the middle school. I think that should be our focus at this time, right? Our priority is that, because kids that leave 8th grade here should be top notch. Speaking Mandarin very well, above others, and education studies wise, and then we'll look at high school. So that's kind of what I'm, but it would be a core education high school, not one of these mega schools.
Even if we can build a high school, we will, at some point, we can be a small, but very strong in 1 or 2 areas. In addition to Mandarin, then you really can sell. You really can sell. And even for sports, maybe we can be the best in, ping pong.
There we go.
Yeah.
Be big enough to have every.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a,
Single
yeah,
person.
football,
But we can have things that are like-
Basketball, you're really on a good idea there. Because we could have a ping pong team.
We can have a ping pong team.
We could have a badminton team, ping pong, badminton team,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and something like that. And we could actually, and the high school would start all at once. We just offer 9th grade. And then after 9th grade, they could transfer to another, right?
True, you really play your strengths.
So let me pose another angle
Yeah.
here. Another option.
Yeah.
To add on, so I think we're gonna be busting at the seams pretty soon, next year. You know, the demand for the middle school is there. Hopefully there's a phased in approach, so we're not biting off more than we can chew. The business case to support it, will financially solve it. That seems pretty short term, in my opinion, right? And,
Yeah. Immediate.
you know, if they think, you know, more macro, right, looking out longer term, I see a need for a high school, something like that, but frankly, the high school to me is a whole other beast. I mean, it's just, you know, so, another potential option, which is up here, is the creation of a Spanish dual immersion program, right? And so, you know, something that's really, really unique, one of the very, very unique things, I know we have SWOT analysis, you know, to do if we get to it.
We did.
If we get to it, right?
I just wanted to start the conversation.
Just that-
Moving in the direction.
Is that this is a tuition free, this is a public school where you can learn another language, and it would really be amazing to be able to do that in other communities as well and offer another language, right? And so let's say a Spanish speaking dual immersion program. And if you can envision, I mean, if we're creating leaders for the future, which is our tagline, right, which we can debate about whether or not we want to adjust that, but if we're creating leaders for the future, we need to think about the future. Right, we've got, I don't know, roughly 1.5 billion English speakers, 1.1 to 1.3, depending on what number you look like. Billion Mandarin speakers, and over 600 million Spanish speakers. But if you can imagine a place where you do funnel into a high school, that's the decision here, where you've got English, Mandarin, Spanish options. It's pretty unique. I don't know anywhere that does it. I know Renaissance has a private program that offers that, but how many of us went to schools anywhere close that had anything like that?
Certainly not.
Right, and certainly not a public school, so,
And they have really strong, I mean, there's a lot of high schools out there that will offer tracks, but they're just basically the language courses for those two tracks, but they don't have, you know, they don't have anything else that's really planned.
yeah, so you could see it, you know, funneling in. And certainly we would need to do the market research to see if we can support, which we think we probably could, middle school, this school. But a Spanish school or something else like that. I mean, after all, we are the Irvine International Academy. So I posed that to you. I know we had an after-school program. We offered some Spanish here, which was great that we offered it. But something more intentional where we can think about a program that offers these different aspects along with the STEAM. That's pretty darn unique. I mean, I do know that, obviously, we all know that Orange County is pro-charter. We're gonna see a lot of charter schools, a lot more charter schools coming into Orange County.
Are you saying another school that would be dual immersion Spanish?
Yeah.
Or are you saying that we add a Spanish component to our existing school?
Well, right now our
I
charter.
I don't like that.
Yeah, right now our
I
charter is
like that.
50-50 Mandarin.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
I think,
But that's not what I'm talking about. So the dual immersion program, you read the charter, it specifically, it doesn't indicate Chinese language. Well, it does, but 90% of that charter talks about the value of a dual language school. But it doesn't specifically say Chinese dual language until later, that's what we're gonna use, that's the language we're gonna
Yeah.
use. But it's the dual language program that is the dual immersion, right? It just happens to be that we're restricted to Chinese because that's what the
that's what
charter
the
says.
charter says.
But what I'm saying
Yeah.
is, we need to find a way to include Spanish language, not part of the dual immersion, Spanish language class.
Yeah.
A class where they learn Spanish. And I'm gonna say Spanish, but potentially Russian also.
Yeah.
Because we have a huge Russian contingent here. But the dual immersion stays Chinese, right? That's not gonna change. Somehow we need to add that in there, whether it's part of the chart, well, it can't be part of the chart, but somehow we need to skinny that in there. Because then we truly are a mixed program, right? And maybe consider Russian too.
Yeah.
So those elective classes that we have with 0 period and what's the last period? Period, right? Mid-period, there could be a language class.
Yeah, I mean, my question is, currently, are we at the point that we have the resource?
Not now.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying,
All the
what
need.
I'm saying is, we focus on middle school.
Right,
What I'm suggesting is, and I'm all for elective in the afternoon for Spanish, but we all know having Spanish, a couple days a week, you're not really gonna, right? What I'm throwing out there is, what's your dual immersion Spanish program, another site,
Oh, no.
okay? And in the afternoon, you could have Mandarin, you could have Russian, you could have other things in the afternoon, also as an option at that place. And then we're feeding in to what would eventually be
Oh, the high school.
a high school,
Hmm.
right? And so now we're
Or
looking
even
at,
that standalone middle school, because honestly, Brett's point, one thing that we are gonna have a hard time with the size of this school campus is being able to feed standalone middle school. Because we're really only ever going to have 2 classes coming out of 5th grade each year, because that's as much room as we have. And so when you look at that, that's only 6 classes of middle school that we're ever feeding from this campus.
So like a middle
Yeah.
school,
Okay.
middle school
I think
expanded language. Kind of middle school that gets fed from different. Two sites. So 2 elementary school sites, one that's maybe Spanish and this one's Chinese. And then you feed into the middle school.
middle
that
school,
adds-
and then
adds
can
more
build into
language.
the high school.
And one thing that's, when you have an elementary going to middle school, it's very easy to overlook that a middle school program is very different than elementary. Elementary, you have your teacher, you have class, you switch. When you get into middle school, there's choices, there's honors classes, we want to do STEAM, we want to do language components. With that is you need to have the student population to support the number of teachers and make that possible. So it's very hard for a single elementary school to feed into a single middle school. For that reason, unless you have
huge.
over 1,000 person elementary school. But it's very hard, and that's why you look, school districts, other charter schools, private schools that have multiple sites, you'll see multiple elementaries. And then they kind of put that feed into a middle school, eventually possibly a high school. So that's something to consider too, because if you want to be able to offer the programs that we're talking about, you probably want a bigger pool of students.
Just, when I do a search and I look at languages spoken around the world, okay, based on number of people, there's 7 billion plus people, and I look at languages spoken by 100 million or more, then it drops down to about 6 million. There are a lot of languages, by the way. Right, but we're talking about, when you add the Spanish component, now you're talking about 40–50% of the world's main, I don't know, I be careful how we say it, right? But main languages, mainstream languages, however you want to consider that, and it obviously opens up different parts of the world. Now we're really building on creating leaders that have something extremely unique, right? I mean, when I talked to Dr. Bean in the beginning about, the interest in IAA and what was it, and he says, there's language programs at the high school level, but it's very unique to have it in the elementary and middle school. We're in a really, really unique place.
Where they learn it.
So
like
we have an opportunity to put TKers on a track, right? that you just wouldn't get in so
Then
many other
actually be
places.
fluent.
Yeah.
At some point, because they start learning it early.
Yeah, we do need, multiple sites, right? Then you can become the feeder eventually to have feeder into IA high school. There are multiple sites. Yeah, but whether that's a Spanish, your immersion or other languages, so we need to do the market analysis and where. And, today, obviously, we're not gonna be here and making a decision and saying, hey, we're gonna set up. It will take time.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of consideration, careful planning. Because right now, we are still at a juncture, we just growing financially, out of you can very weak person, now we're
Yeah.
recovering.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, part of the impetus for this was to get that conversation going, because we did have a countywide charter that was kind of in the works last year, for us to apply for a countywide charter. And so, I wanna make sure that we're honoring that, but we're also looking at, is that, do we wanna do that? Do we wanna do, what is our best path forward? Or are we ready to pull the trigger on something now, or do we need to do a little bit more planning?
No, I just along a line, just, I mean, I think this is great because this actually catalyze, this vivid discussion, okay? This is good. It's not heated discussion, but really,
Don't worry.
discussion. It's a good discussion because, this is actually the very, very first time a bigger group is sitting here, talk about this, thrilled. Maybe we can have some tests, like, start with the Spanish program, adding a Spanish program here as a test case, instead of going all out. So starting to, let's create a separate site, and with the Spanish, English dual program. Maybe we could, get a program here, just to see how it goes, right? How many kids would love to have Spanish, English, and Chinese? I mean, whatever the combination might be. And that'll be a good test.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for that. So, but the countywide charter, the goal for the countywide charter, I believe, supports the opening of a Spanish dual immersion school.
It
Right?
does check that
So,
box.
so that checks that box, because to do that, we would need the countywide charter. Is
Well,
that correct?
sort, so there's some different options. So right now, and I've looked through kind of the draft of the countywide charter a couple of times. It was very rough, like, very beginning
Rough,
stages.
Beginning.
But, so it is a little, as I'm, kind of trying to think about how we would write that to encompass multiple languages. We'd have to be very careful to write it so that we weren't tied in to teaching multiple languages on one campus. And that we were able to have, one campus be one language, one campus be another language, if that was the direction that we wanted to go, but also leaving us the ability to then make middle school both languages. So it's gonna be somewhat tricky to write a charter that encompasses all of that into one countywide charter.
So,
So the other option would be to wait until we've decided exactly what we want to do. And then write a charter for that specific scenario. Because we do know, that the county at this moment seems quite charter friendly. And so,
and I would think we have a big leg up because they're looking at our model.
yeah,
right?
I mean, we have a
It's successful.
successful
So
model.
we have a big leg up.
So if we went that route, we would probably we would have to first apply through whatever district, be it Irvine or whatever. And then apply to the county if we were denied. But it would allow us some flexibility to be able to write the charter exclusively for that program and make it much more tailored, because it is a little bit, difficult right now looking at how it's written, to make sure that it kind of meets all of those points.
So I thought the purpose of the countywide charter was to make it easier. We sort of skipped that step, the first step there. We sort of skipped that step. We don't have to go to the
Yeah.
district and say, once we get the countywide charter, we could open 3 or 4 schools in any district. Is that?
We can open schools in any district in the county. We do have to
Then-
apply for
yeah.
material revision each time.
Right. And
But,
that was the purpose of
but
it
it does allow us to open schools a little bit faster,
faster.
without going through the full process. So it takes like 2 months off of each time that we want to open it.
And there might be some advantage to how the board would be set up, right? Because it's one board for.
You can have multiple charters, with the same board. So you're the same nonprofit, but you can even have schools that are authorized by different districts, like, we were that at OPA, and there's a couple of other schools around, like Ocasa, where one school is authorized by a district, one school is authorized by the county. It's one nonprofit corporation run by one board, that oversees all of those different schools. There are some extra strings attached if you have multiple charters versus one countywide. We have to write an LCAP for each one. So there's some additional paperwork that's involved in it. But it does allow us to really tailor so that the upside is it allows us to tailor the charter specifically for that school. And sometimes it's a little easier if you're authorized to the district to actually get the sites and things like that and get what you need from the district. But there's some more paperwork and it takes a little bit more time. So there's kind of an upside and a downside to both. That's why there's both of those different options. There's a financial difference if you're in certain areas, but it doesn't really apply to us as much because of where we're located. If we were located like in the BC8 district or a really low income district, there would be some financial reasons not to go for a countywide charter. But where we are, we're pretty much funded in the straight state average. So that isn't an issue. But it's really kind of dependent on kind of more strings attached, a little bit more time, or a little bit easier to, if you're authorized by a district, it's sometimes a little bit easier to work with that district in terms of facilities or equipment or things. And technically Irvine did now authorize a charter school. And they have worked with us actually very well this year. They've been very accommodating, very easy to work with. And not really giving us too much of a headache. So there could be some opportunities there.
But also if we Prop 39, we have countywide and we Prop 39, we could end up in the county somewhere,
So,
right?
yeah.
But if we do it for the district, then we should end up hopefully ideally in the district.
In that district, yeah. Because we have to, so any place, if we have a countywide charter, we can say we want a facility in Irvine. We still have to let Irvine know, we still have to go through the whole material revision process. But it allows us to go to other places, but we could end up with, no, you're not gonna have one in Irvine. You're gonna have- That's the understanding.
So I see, on the item for discussion that this is being countywide benefit charter petition.
Yeah, so this is
this
kind of
that
moving in.
Discussion?
So we can kind of, I mean, it was gonna be kind of a mixed discussion
Yeah,
about
okay.
both, depending on where we went with the first initial discussion. But in order to sort of also honor the fact that we were moving forward with that process of the countywide charter, I wanted to make sure that we had a discussion about that. And also, do we think that we're ready to kind of pull the trigger on that this year? Do we wanna, kind of like David was saying, test out some different things before we pull the trigger on that, and maybe look at that more in the spring or, or over the summer or the fall of next year. So this was, kind of moving into that discussion of, do we want to move forward with that because we had said at the end of last year that we were gonna move forward with that, or do we wanna wait until we have a better, kind of an idea of exactly what we want that to look like?
when will we need to make a decision?
Depends on when we wanted to open a new campus. So if we wanted to open, we kind of probably, we're not probably in a financial situation right now to do it for next year. We pretty well miss, I mean, we would have to do it like right now in order to make it for next year. So for the following, if we were to look at the following year, then really we would have to submit it, early, end of the summer, early fall. Coming up. So we have about a year. To be able to kind of discuss it, figure it out, because we would want to make sure that we had it, kind of lined up, knew where we wanted to put in our Prop 39 paperwork by November 1st, by next November.
Next year.
Yeah, so we have it's about a year, for the, if we wanted to do something for the fall.
So if I'm looking at the steps here, just in my head, that sounds about right to me, because I think we should be focusing on the middle school. You know, building the middle school the best it could be, and once we get it to the level that we're happy, we move on to the next step, which is, yeah, whether it's the countywide charter or the next program, whatever it is, but middle school should be our primary focus right now. Right, in my opinion, with the Spanish class.
Are they connected?
Somewhere.
Is the middle school and the countywide?
Not necessarily. So we could do the middle school in multiple different ways. We could do the middle school as a satellite campus of this current charter. And just ask for a separate non-contiguous facility in our 39. Basically, turn in our paperwork, say we're okay with multiple sites. We're gonna have 700 kids. We have meaningful interest forms for 700 kids. We don't fit here. You need to give us facility for another 200 kids. That would involve no real change in our, we'd have to do a material revision to add a satellite site, but it wouldn't involve us turning in another charter position. It would all fall under this current IA charter position. If we wanted to make a middle school that we could then feed from another elementary school, then that would involve either a countywide charter or a separate middle school charter, because we couldn't feed a separate school into a middle school with this current charter. We could have two separate K
Yeah.
fives.
But for that scenario, we would still need a charter outside.
Yeah.
Right,
No matter what we do the charter.
for that scenario, no matter how we do it, we need charters.
Well, my first scenario where we would just be adding just be moving middle school on here
Not-
within Irvine, then we don't need a new charter.
Right, where we would feed the middle school from another.
Yeah, we did.
We would need another charter anyway. And we're thinking of opening another campus, I should say campus, another dual immersion school. No, another dual immersion school. Feed that, then that cost would start in next November. Right, so that's what I'm thinking, seems to be the most logical path. And then by that time, for sure, certainly be more financially solid, right?
We're gonna hear a
And
little
then
bit more about that tonight.
Yeah,
with our
so
budget
that's
request.
very much, right? And as long as all those things, you know, to me, that's a marker, right? As long as that marker looks good, that the financial situation continues to improve. The curriculum in the current school, you know, elementary school and I guess we call it the middle school, continues to be solid. Then that's the next step. Yeah,
So let me ask about, growth in, like a growth internally. We talk about growth. Is it possible we can add more facility here? And, because we have a pretty big lot.
Yeah, so
and-
that's what I'm gonna try to kind of feel out
Yeah.
this time
That would be the
if they're open
easiest, right?
to that.
From a management standpoint, of logistics, everything is the easiest, low cost.
Well, this must have been eating. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
To me,
I was eating there.
yeah, because I think that probably, to me,
Yeah.
that has a lot of appeal. It has a lot of appeal for the people like, I have 2 kids here and they would be split, right? And the culture of the school would still be, they'd still be close, right? So they would still be part of that, close but separate.
Yeah.
Right? So they would still be part of the culture of the school, is what I kind of like. That's why I like that,
Yeah.
but they still have their own room, right? You
So
know,
that would be the kind of feeling it out, because technically we can't, so as part of Prop 39, we can't really say here's what we want. We
Right.
say, we have 600 students, you need to provide us with facilities. We would love to stay on this site. But then Irvine can say, well, we're gonna give you this site, but 6 portables over there on a different campus, or they can say, we're going to put 6 portables back on your campus, so we can, and that can be negotiated as well as part of those, negotiations with them. If they were to say, we're just gonna give you 3 portables over here, then it would be, much probably easier to just put 3 portables here versus trying to share a site. For us, it would definitely be better. For Irvine, it would be a little more expensive, than just getting us.
Because we really don't know what their future is.
And so that's why we can't dictate that, but we can definitely feel them out. And we can definitely make those
Suggest.
proposals, yes, and suggestions, and
Strong.
ask for those.
Strong.
Strong.
So are we okay to charge Dr. Kernan to explore different pathways for the middle school expansion to see what options
Yeah.
might exist
Yeah.
there and to be able to present that to us?
Do you guys have anything you guys want to add about?
I know, me and Dave, so see, this is your first time, like, me and Dave talk a lot. So you guys need to just show me in.
For me, from an educational standpoint, I think the path that would be highest rate of success is to have a separate elementary dual immersion, and then expand the middle school out further. Because I know with middle school, there's higher expectations. I mean, you talk about academic rigor. Well, right now, one of the struggles with the middle school is the size. And that's not going to really change the foreseeable future for the next couple of years. Because we have students who want this elective, or they want this honors class, or they want this higher level classes. In order to make that possible, we need to have a bigger student population if possible.
That's what I was gonna ask you. When you mean by the size, we're not big enough.
Correct, because
That's it.
you don't have
Not enough
you
kids.
don't have enough kids, or we don't have enough teachers, it's just to make the schedule work. The schedule as it is, it's always a puzzle that you constantly working out, and, but that's kind of the path I see with the highest rate of success.
Yeah, and I guess one of the assumptions I have is that we look at that. It's coming.
Yeah.
That's why I want to see the middle school program or whatever it ends up being a priority, because it's coming. We're gonna get more kids next year and following year even more so. If that we continue down this path,
And
right?
then around the similar to the middle school, you do like the next separation.
They're like,
So I think we are on the same page, now the focus is really kind of explore different options on middle school, not necessarily high school. So it's really kind of long-term planning.
It's
It's too long.
I know, I'm the one who brought it up, but now I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But you're
We
saying,
have these conversations.
but it still should be in
But
the,
it should be on the
it should be in
long-term
the, the vision.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what drives a powerful middle school. Right? If we can drive a powerful middle school, that's in the vision. That's one of our goals. Now, they may not go to our high school, but when those kids leave middle school, they gotta be, I don't wanna call them stellar, but they better than most, right? I want them, I've never heard of them recruiting high school, or recruiting, that's what I wanna see. That's the thing I wanna see. I wanna see newspaper articles written about our students and about how well they're doing and how they're succeeding. So that would be, bigger focus.
Mr. Schmidt, are you saying that we shouldn't look at expanding the middle school? Is that?
Well, I think, that's the goal, but I think we want to build that base first. I would say out of all our grade levels, the only grade level that we have that could probably feed into a middle school is our current kindergarten class. So we have about 120 students in the kindergarten class. But in perspective, I think 5th grade right now at 49. So let's say hypothetically, there's more growth. I mean, right now, 6th and 7th is smaller than that. Let's say they're all at 50 next year. That's 150 students. That's still not the ideal size you want for middle school to offer the type of programs. Because when we talk about the language programs, the STEAM, the electives, with the academic rigor opportunities, you're probably looking closer to like 300 students.
Especially just to be able to have a teacher that's able, that's credentialed to teach Spanish and a teacher that's credentialed to teach computer and then a teacher that's credentialed to be able to teach some science.
Credentialing requirements at middle school is different than elementary. Elementary is multiple subject, they teach their classroom, that's fine. When you go to middle school, there's single subject, so there's subject specific.
So your suggestion is another dual immersion site
Elementary,
for elementary that's TK, starts at TK.
and it's what we're doing and it's what we've been successful at.
Yeah, but is it TK to 8 or is it TK to
I would do TK.
3?
Well, I think that's where we kind of have to decide, when is middle school gonna start?
Yeah.
When middle school to start, sixth grade, you want seventh grade?
And if we're building something, then it would probably, we wanted to have a standard would be a TK to 5. And then start building that into, then that second year of fifth graders from that school or third year going out.
Or if you get wonderful campus opportunity that's big and it has different sections, you could potentially have an elementary and a middle school and it's kind of separate but on one campus. But I don't know if that campus exists right now, but I would say.
I mean, it exists right now in Lake Forest because that's actually did with
Okay.
Oxford is we
Yeah.
put a fence and we built a middle school campus
And
on
I-
a separate part.
And I've seen 2 other districts do that in the last 10 years. That they had a larger campus, and they split it into an elementary campus. and a middle school campus. It's literally just.
I mean,
a
Oxford,
fence right down
Oxford
the middle.
Academy in Anaheim is split that way as well. Well, there's this middle school campus and a high school campus.
Is
There's
it
a
a
lot of,
public school?
Oxford Academy is a public school. It's actually the top rated public school, but switches. There's 2 very high rated schools that switch back and forth. Usually the number. They're 7 through 12. You know, kind of a smaller campus because it is a magnet school for very high achieving students. But they have, you know, how they basically they have their middle school and then it's separate from high school. So you can do that with elementary, middle school.
And that's not to say you can't have a middle school of 150 students, but if you're looking for quality, you have to continue. Part of that, double that. If you have 2 school sites, you could definitely.
Well, I would just look at our middle school here and I wonder if the quality is, how confident we are in the middle school here, because it's gonna be this, and maybe, I mean, it's gonna be this, right,
Yeah.
that we're gonna mirror.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the middle school, the way it was structured was a little bit different than I would have done to start. But that's something that we're going to work through ready for next school year. You know, having included how fifth grade was included and some of the scheduling things, but we're gonna. That's an area for us.
Yeah.
And I think there is some issues, I mean, Betsy can talk a little bit about credentialing, but I think there is some inherent issues with how small our middle school is that, like Grant kind of touched on is, you know, we have a hard time leveling our math classes, our Mandarin classes, being able to provide, you know, like sort of say a general math pathway and then an accelerated math pathway, because then you're talking about adding in multiple classes that are then gonna have very few students in them, but making it work in a schedule that's so very tight because we have 8 periods to fill up, you know, all of the academic subjects and certain kids are going to then, we only have so many teachers. So if you have 8 kids sitting over here in an algebra class, who are 8th graders, and 8 kids sitting over here in an 8th class that are 8th graders, right now, we've had to sort of combine those classes together and differentiate, where it is, you know, better if those classes can be completely separated. Teachers can focus on those individual, the individual needs of those different levels of students, so.
And the schedule this year was just very impacted by credentialing requirements, so just staff trying to make it work, it was kind of because the square fit into a circle. We were able to make it work, but it took hours and hours during the summer just looking it over, but.
And Betsy can kind of talk about that.
So we had to figure out how to get our teachers to teach the classes, but do it fully credentialed. So we did it, but you want to be able, this is a math teacher, they teach you math. This is a ELA teacher, they teach ELA, so that way you have teachers in their specialty, doing what they want to do. And then in order, as right now, the middle school is small, so because it's so small, you get a lot of personal time with teachers. Well, it's gonna be keep growing and growing, and so if we continue on the path for middle school, I can see some issues. So that's kind of what we're working through. But in order to go to a bigger middle school, like if it's separate middle school, you just want more students to kind of get to it. We also don't want to do too big too soon. So.
So then my question is it premature to even have this discussion for the fall?
For
Or-
middle school,
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about expansion, we're talking about next year,
I
right?
think probably for next year, we're a little premature to be able to really have a standalone middle school for next year. I think if we're looking at it, it would be, like I said, for the year after, so not for 25, 26, 27. Just because right now, we would only, if we were doing it for next year, a standalone middle school, we'd have about 70 kids, and that's if all of our kids are current 5th or 7th graders went, we'd lose any students. moving.
We can recruit some other middle schools, from other schools.
We can. It's hard to do that right off the bat, though,
Yeah.
until you have something established.
Right.
but and the hardest part recruiting students right now is with middle school being elementary on campus. Yep, middle schoolers, like I said, they want learning separate because it's the age. So trying to get them recruit to come to our school when they look down the hall and see elementary. The parents will be fine with some of the kids.
I mean, we weren't able to recruit some 8th graders this year, that weren't here last year. Like, I think we got like 5 new 8th graders, so we have been able to recruit them, but it's kind of small numbers because we are still on an elementary system, as we just don't have that really robust. Yes,
If we open another elementary to immersion, right, it's TK to 5th, right? Eventually, are we gonna scale back, would we scale back here, TK to 5th and combine those to make a middle school?
and then, that would be the way to
Yeah.
feed a middle school.
Right, because I mean, TK through 5th, we can say that we replicate what we're doing here in another school. High chance of being successful. So I mean, I think that would be, I mean, there's definitely talking about research and language, how many people speak Spanish in the world. There would be a need for Spanish. And it's a little easier to find teachers, right, credential, to teach Spanish.
You definitely make that.
A lot easier.
Yeah, but then we will be following our model here, right? The Seoul International Academy would be there. Yeah, high chance of success there.
Yeah, the only potential challenge is, you have immersion, Spanish immersion program and Chinese immersion program. Eventually, when you kind of mix the middle school level, the potential.
Potential.
Yeah, different, because of different culture.
All-
Yes.
And all things considered, it's a good problem, right? I mean, I happen to be Latino and I work at a,
Yeah.
a Mandarin immersion school.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's the point, right? I mean, it's that everyone's coming to school together and learning about different cultures and, right, traditions.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing, we're opening minds. Yeah.
We're attracting more Latino and Russian families every year.
And I wonder if they would be sister schools, I'm kind of envisioning them being sister schools and then they could share events, right? Maybe to be
Exactly.
part of that
Yeah.
immersion thing. But that might be kind of tough if the Spanish dual immersion was in. It'd be hard to do.
I think it would be very,
That would-
and
It would
especially
have
if
to be close.
we're trying to build up into them both feeding into a middle school, they would definitely need to be close, like
They
neighboring.
would have to, because one of the things, and you kind of put a damper on the school. Okay,
Yeah, that's,
'cause I thought
each
it's-
one has gotta be
Yeah, I
responsible
know.
for it. so-
Because, the kids,
We're
yeah,
having
with
these
the volume test,
conversations.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did that, but another thought that I had was, okay, so let's say we do have these two dual immersion schools. There's no guarantee that when the kids leave sixth grade, let's just say it's sixth grade, they're going to seventh or fifth grade. And they go to sixth, seventh, eighth, we're planning them to go to our middle school, that sixth, seventh, eighth, they could go to a different.
And that's the
So we're not, there's no guarantee that they would funnel 150 each into our middle school.
And that's the same.
That's
for
what happens as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look,
You're gonna
especially
lose
in middle
some,
school,
but
you
you're
have
gonna
some
attract
classes, There's always.
And you're gonna get some, I mean, but then if we have a really strong middle school
You get,
program that has both Spanish and Mandarin, you may get some that come in just for the middle school because they maybe didn't want to have the full dual immersion elementary school experience, but they want them to be ready with those languages when they get into high school.
You can have a separate campus, maybe in like Mission Viejo area, I'm strongly. Yes, have something in Mission Viejo area.
What did others do now? I hear there's an open.
I-
There's an open campus somewhere in that Mission Viejo area.
So we're not gonna solve it all right.
We're not gonna solve it all right now.
But it would be good to leave the meeting with some
Yeah.
actions.
Yeah.
So what we were discussing, one path was to charge Dr. Kernan to research the middle school pathway, right? And see what that might entail, but we have to look at the pros and cons, and we have to look and see if we have an administration who can support it too, because you guys are key. It's part of it. But we should also look at another pathway that's being suggested and see what that looks like, and think that needs to be supported. It could be different. I know we mentioned maybe it'd be great to have Spanish here and
Yeah.
great to have a part, but I'm not sure that
Maybe have one class.
all the students here will be the right, student base that'll go to that school. And we'd have to, that's basically starting a whole new charter and getting. There's a petition and signatures and the whole thing, getting the support of the community. So it's a whole endeavor, which we have to see if that's something we want to do too.
So I could maybe suggest that if we're looking at those two pathways, another K-5, dual immersion in, say, Spanish, and then the expansion of the middle school, I could kind of work on a plan and some timelines and things for those two options to bring forward in a future meeting in a month or two, where we could have the same conversation now that we've kind of winnowed it down to those two possible options, and then we could have a discussion based on some research of, where there might be some interest in a Spanish dual immersion school, where there might be some open facilities where that would fit. And then also looking at then the middle school model, what that might look like in terms of if we went forward with a separate campus for the middle school as well. If you guys would want to move forward with those two options. Different scenarios.
And could you add whether it's a countywide charter, so how that
Yeah,
applies with
would fit with either one.
each one of those? Are we comfortable with that?
Let's start.
yes, I am, but I like, you guys never could be mad at me, okay? But I went back to what you were talking about, this is great. But when you were talking about getting the volume of students into the middle school, right? What about and our thought was we would have the Spanish dual immersion and current Chinese dual immersion, and probably them into one. What about the possibility of another Chinese dual immersion? Right, so now we have two with similar curriculums, right? I mean, they'd almost be exactly the same, right? Except for the teachers, right? And then those two are funneling into the middle school. I think you're more likely to get a higher percentage of those students to funnel into the middle school. So that's what I was talking.
Yeah, based on that, I think that's a good idea. If we have another school, maybe we can call it dual immersion, but we have two tracks. We have Spanish immersion class and Mandarin immersion class. We
That's
can
true
have-
for emotion.
Yeah, try, like, some of the schools in LA, they have trilingual, they have Spanish, Mandarin, English. We can have 2 classes to Mandarin and English, 2 classes to Spanish and English. And we already have the model set up here, so they can mimic the 50-50 model. And it would be easier to find Spanish teachers, to teach Spanish, right?
And you'd have to find maybe less Chinese.
You can, I mean, just that's going back to earlier what I suggested, you can have a test case here, have a smaller program, a Spanish program here. And, conversely, in a separate school, you can have a more Spanish focus and less Chinese language focus. And this school probably can better fit into the demographics there, for example, right? Because my assessment is that you're gonna have a lot of Spanish speaking people, but you also have a lot of a growing Chinese population from Colo de Casa to Rancho Santa Margarita to Mission Viejo and Laguna, Laguna Niguel, all these areas, there's no service there. And they have to, either send it to public school or to a private school. There's no other,
The triple track.
Yeah, and it just reverse, maybe have a more kind of a Spanish focus, less Chinese language focus. And here we have a more heavier Mandarin focus. I mean, then, we can test. That'd be my suggestion.
So for sake of time, should we can we just look at another TK through 5, whether it's Spanish or Mandarin, but maybe provide that option? We can decide at a later time.
Yeah. Because then that will kind of determine also if we were going to go that route, a countywide charter would be very easy because both schools would be very similar.
Yeah.
It would just be, one would focus a little more on one language than the other, but they would be basically the same school, just two identical schools. So that would make the countywide charter piece a more viable, easier option than having a Mandarin dual version and a Spanish dual version that are trying to fit both of those.
I would add, I mean, that's all great. That's all great. But since you're looking into it, what would it take to have a Spanish class? And not part of the dual immersion, just the Spanish language class.
It would have to be an after school class right now because our schedule is
Okay,
so impacted, and we wouldn't be able to find a credentialed Spanish teacher that just taught one class. And in order to teach it during the school
Geo.
day, they would have to be credentialed.
Geo.
Geo is not a credentialed teacher.
Oh.
If we taught it during the school day, it would have to be a credentialed teacher that has a Spanish credential, but we could do it after school, as like a, kind of a after school program.
Is there-
class.
right, is there elective somehow, somewhere somehow?
Can't be,
Well,
it can't be in our educational program.
It can't be in our program.
Otherwise, it would have to be a credentialed teacher, a Spanish credentialed teacher, which we would never find one who just wanted to teach one. So that's where the credentialing issues come.
Well, if it was easy, I would have given it to somebody else to figure out.
But we could do it as like an optional after school program, which is what we were going to do through strategic kids.
Well, good, then I'm asking to find out.
Yeah, so I'll find out.
So coming
I
back.
find that if we put enough pressure on after school kids, things.
It's going really well.
Jill, are we clear?
Yes.
Okay, and Doug, did you have anything to add?
Nope, I've just enjoyed all the conversation. I think we're hitting all the right topics.
I think at some point, we're gonna need to do some market research.
Yeah.
Figure out
That's kind
the
of where,
market
yeah.
and where we're gonna be able to support and what language and all of
And
that.
location.
Yeah,
Location
location.
and all
So I think that is-
facilities.
So that'll be my next step, to
Yeah.
kind of bring that to you guys, maybe, right
Yeah.
before winter break, so
Yeah.
that we're on that same timeline. If we want to pull the trigger on something for the following year, we would be ready by next summer.
I like the way, Brett mentioned about looking really forward. to the future. And I did a little bit of research. I didn't find any dual immersion Spanish in Irvine. I know they have it in
Irvine
Tustin.
doesn't, but they have it in Tustin,
In Tustin and
Saddleback
San-
and
yeah.
they have a, on either side of us.
Right, but
Um,
not
but
here. So I would love to see it.
So there may be a need
Maybe
for
there's
that,
a
yeah.
Shockingly, there could be a need.
Yeah.
Right? And then it'd be nice if it was here, then we could do that sister school. right?
Well, and then it makes the middle school easier because
Yeah.
it's more convenient.
Yeah.
I'd love to see different languages.
Do they know what
together
the
so we can
population
share.
of Spanish is speaking Polish in Irvine?
There's 300,000 people.
Okay.
All of us here.
Move us on, yeah.
So we're gonna
So,
close the study session.
yes, it's recommended the board adjourn the study session of the Irvine International Academy Board of Directors on September 17, 2024. Is there a motion?
On motion, so.
Thank you, Felipe. Is there a second? Thank you, David. We're gonna do roll call. Molly,
Yes.
Felipe?
Here.
I say yes.
Yes.
We know you.
Yes.
I'm a yes. David?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Miller? Absent. Okay, meeting adjourned at 7 o'clock on the dot. Okay, we're calling to order this Irvine International Academy Board meeting. It is 7:08. Today's Tuesday, September 17, 2024. Meeting location Irvine International Academy, 4782 Karen Ann Lane, Irvine, California, 92604. We will have someone calling in from teleconference location 2275 Marsant Avenue, Corona, California, 92882. That'll be Doug Husen, who will be recognized during the roll call. Okay, I'm gonna start with roll call. Molly Chang,
Present.
Felipe,
Present.
Brett is here. Doug,
Here?
thank you, and you are the teleconference location referenced.
Yes.
David Lund,
Present.
Miller? Absent. Okay, next time I'd like to approve the agenda for the regular meeting of the Irvine International Academy Board of Directors. So today, September 17, 2024, it's recommended that the board directors approve the agenda for the regular meeting of the Irvine International Academy Board of Directors on September 17, 2024. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, David. Is there a second? Thank you, Molly. We roll call vote, Molly,
Yeah, yes.
Felipe?
Yes.
I'm a yes. David?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Miller? Absent. Okay, next item is the flag salute. Do we have any volunteers? I'm happy to lead. Please face the flag, put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Thank you very much. Okay, next item, community input on agendized items. Public may comment on items listed on the agenda, including the consent calendar, presentation, discussion committee, and action items.
We do have,
Okay, and we're gonna set a timer for 3 minutes. Is that right?
one second, get it going.
Do I need to talk into the microphone?
You can talk into that one if you want, if you want to.
That, thank you.
That'd be perfect. You can have a seat, pick up the.
I'm ready. Thank you.
All right, okay.
Good evening. Thank you, members of the board, for the opportunity to share public comments tonight. I just had something really quick regarding the agenda from the August 20th meeting. I respectfully request that item 12 from that, the minutes, the director's reports of the August 20th meeting minutes be amended to incorporate the remarks that Mr. Delgado made about the Pledge of Allegiance and making sure that all classrooms are equipped with flags. I didn't see it in there, and for the record, I would like to read the section of the Ed Code that is pertinent in this case, which is 57-720, which states, in every public elementary school, each day during the school year, at the beginning of the first regularly scheduled class or activity period, at which the majority of the pupils of the school normally begin the school day, there shall be conducted appropriate patriotic exercises. The giving of the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America shall satisfy the requirements of this section, and furthermore, section 52-730 says, providing instruction that promotes understanding the concepts of pledge, allegiance, republic, and indivisible, and understanding the importance of the pledge as an expression of patriotism, love of country, and pride in the United States of America shall satisfy the requirements of section 52-720. Thank you.
And we'll amend the minutes. I believe actually the reason that it wasn't in there was because it was during Mr. Schmitter's presentation. And so it wasn't in the board comments, but I will add that into the minutes, and we'll, if the board is okay, we can pull the minutes off the consent calendar for this meeting and revise them and add them into the next meeting.
What we can motion, I can motion.
Yeah,
Should we motion that?
when we get to the consent items, we'll
Oh,
do
okay.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have two items that you,
My other one was a question regarding the budget, so I can do it now, or we can wait for budget?
you can do it now since
Okay.
we're doing agendized items?
No problem. I was just reviewing the budget and I don't know if Delano's gonna be
Not
on
on yet, but I
yet.
can ask. Oh, he's gonna be here too.
I saw in there where it looked like 50,000 had been earmarked as revenue coming from the PTO. So I just wanted to get a little clarification surrounding that, because I saw that it was at 75,000, then revised down, and I didn't know if that, like, last year we did give a grant to the school. So I didn't know if the school is counting on a grant from us again, so.
I can answer that,
Okay.
so, because Delano and I worked on the budget together, and that was actually at my direction. So I know that we had talked in the PTO about I think it was 130,000 last year, and you guys weren't quite aware of it
Right.
until it happened.
Right.
And so this year there was 75,000 in the budget. And I didn't want to tie the PTO to a large number, but based on all of our conversations that we had, it seemed like 50,000 would be a better budget placeholder for that, than 75,000 or 130,000. So we dropped that down to the 50,000, not based on you guys promising us anything, but kind of based on historically, what would be a very conservative number from the board, so that, I mean, from the PTO, so that we weren't holding you guys to a big, huge number without you guys having agreed to it. So we dropped it down to be kind of a very conservative number. We are very happy if we get more than that throughout the year, but it's kind of a placeholder for the things that you guys have been giving us for school supplies, and all of those different things. So it's
So-
not a grant, it's to cover the money that you guys have been reimbursing us for
Okay.
school supplies and all
Very
of those
good.
kinds of things. So
Got it.
that's why we dropped it down to that number, because that was kind of closer to what we had kind of talked about in our meetings. And I didn't want to over promise for you guys.
That will be fine, and our budget is according to that.
Yes.
So it's just that anything above and beyond that would be in a form of a grant is not something we have.
Yes, so that's why we took it down.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
No
That's all.
problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Tiffany, for your comment, your question. Okay, do we have any other public comments?
We do not.
Okay. Item 4, items for consent. We have 2 items here, but it looks like we're going to be pushing amended modifications.
Yeah,
Item A.
Full item A,
Is there a motion to pull item A?
I'll motion so.
All right, thank you very much.
but approve item B for the motion.
Yeah, I was gonna remove item A and then vote on. You want to do that? We'll
We can
remove
do
item A
it.
and approve item B.
That's correct.
Okay, so Felipe, are you still okay with the first motion?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Oh, second. Okay. go ahead.
Molly.
Molly, thank you. All right, I'll do roll call vote. Molly,
Yes.
Felipe,
Yes.
I'm a yes. David?
Yep.
Doug?
Yes.
Miller? Absent. Okay. So item A removed, item B approved. Next item 5, items for presentation, school update, Principal Schmitter.
You just see how it- So right now, our current enrollment is holding strong at 531. I believe right now we have 3 to 4 potential students coming in the next week as well. So we should probably see that number tick up a little bit. So that's kind of where we're at, and I believe our ADA for the first month was at 97%. Put in perspective, I think last year was 95%, 2 years ago was 92. So we're making improvements in that area. In general, drop off, supervision, pickup, all those, just the operations of the schools continuing is actually getting smoother by the day, by the week. Even if we had student staff out on jury duty or ill, the first few weeks of school, we had a lot of people out sick, but we were able to cover those and not miss a beat. So in general, the school operations are running smoothly. So if you see the drop off in the morning, picks up in the afternoon, it goes pretty quickly, probably quicker than most schools. So that's been good. Our music teacher began instruction this week, so she just finished up her second day. She did send out a survey to middle school students about interest in terms of electives. Kind of looking like right now it might be a strings elective. I know there's some demand for the families from that. I believe it's about 12 students who expressed interest. So she's going to be working on that. But in general, music instruction is back for everybody else. And
What class, where's her classroom?
she is the modular right out there.
Oh, so she's actually in the first
She's in
portable.
the first portable right there, yeah.
I didn't know we had that portable available.
We got it this year. And the whole plan was that was always going to be the music room. So it's
What are her instruments of expertise?
string, orchestra, just general. She worked with Irvine Unified for a number of years, assisting with strings and orchestra. She can do choir, oral stuff. She's not a singer per se, but she knows the theory. She can, model things for them. Definitely piano as well. So, yeah. All right. Right now, we currently have all our positions filled, which is nice. In our K-4 class, technically she's a sub, but she is a fully credentialed Mandarin teacher. Right now, kind of assessing the hope is that she turns into a permanent teacher. There's desire there, but for her, she does go a little bit further than most of our other teachers. So that's what she wanted to test out before she fully committed to the year. We do have our new 3rd grade long-term sub going to be starting full-time in September 30th. I believe I mentioned this a couple months back, but we had to switch that for credentialing reasons. It's not about performance or anything like that, but Mr. Keenan had limitations on how long he can be in the classroom for. The teacher coming in is fully credentialed, so the teacher would then fulfill September 30th through December. Since it's outside.
His last day is the 26th.
27th.
27th. Is she shadowing?
She is going to be coming early and shadowing, so she'll be there pretty much the most of the week. She'll be shadowing, and then it'll kind of like, okay, now she teaches a part of it, kind of like a transfer there. Kind of a model you see a lot of students do. So that way they transfer, parents are aware of what's going on, communication is very important.
And Mr. Keenan will be still here through winter break on campus in different areas.
She's bilingual.
Yeah, so she's fluent in Korean and she does speak kind of intermediate.
That's more than me.
Yeah, she can definitely have conversations.
Yeah.
We have our coffee with the principal on Thursday. Just some of the topics that we are going to be discussing is bullying in general. I'll be kind of updating community on staffing. Talked about, and then the security and supervision in general. So that will kind of be topics of conversation.
Would there be an opportunity to introduce the supervision?
I was going to do that. I just have to look at her schedule.
Okay.
She does have a letter though that she's drafted up that that should be signed up. Well,
So on the website, there is a page from our previous music teacher, perhaps she would
Remember first things, maybe she wants to make it in there, feedback.
Yeah.
Vision.
Yeah, and then she actually went back into that and kind of all the other things that had been done before, talked to the former teacher, so she kind of knows exactly where everything's coming from. So she's gonna be kind of building.
Cause that may update the website.
You still have
Which.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's-
Definitely.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Maybe you could talk to a parent about school situation. My experience with some parents, they don't really know that. Students. So you can't really mention. And just let them know, it's not that we don't want to tell you, it's just, you have to protect them. Because a lot of parents don't know this, yeah.
Yeah, on the next pick, on my next page on the update, that's something I was gonna address, but absolutely.
yeah, they want to know. what to go through.
All right.
Teachers too. Some of the teachers, I remember. They just mentioned.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, I've been kind of emphasizing that, it's not, and, you know, some people say this is not very transparent, so it's not about transparency, it's about protecting the students.
Right.
I will share as much information as I can. And then, from an instructional leadership and curriculum adoption, I've been meeting with all the teachers, kind of starting that coaching process. They've all set goals, and I'll be meeting with them every month to work on those goals with observations and one time together. And then we'll also be piloting the K-5 social studies and Mandarin curriculum this year. Because we don't have a social studies curriculum for K-5, and we should, very simply. So we'll be working on that.
Right now, we're using the lessons that are in Wonders. So Wonders does have social studies supporting materials, but it's not a full social studies curriculum. So we're gonna look at implementing a full social studies. So students are getting social studies, they're just getting Wonders curriculum, but it's standalone social studies.
It's not very comprehensive, and so with that, we'll go through a fully pilot process. We'll have time, opportunities for parents to kind of review the curriculum, so that in there what's in it as well. So that way it's for that. But also, we're going to be doing the same thing for our curriculum. That is something that we continue to hear from the management teachers. That's it.
Good question.
Yep.
Maybe it's just kind of crazy, it's like my daughter's classroom, whatever, but you know, just looking at some of the homework. Some of the homework, it doesn't make sense, and so. Like, you're just looking at the Mandarin assignment, she's got, telling her to draw the picture, what the characters are trying to set, right? You can't even see what the picture is, you know, so I guess my question is there any observation into the actual homework assignments that are provided beyond just teacher or?
There's guidelines that are given. Now, when the situation has come up, I've reviewed it, and so there's a couple of concerns at other grade levels, so I've looked into that.
Yeah.
But typically there's guidelines that they're supposed to follow. Now, if it's not being followed, I can't get into it, but we have a lot of classes, and trying to look through every single homework assignment is a lot. But if there is something that does come up, I absolutely do.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering, I've seen it now in her English class and her Mandarin class, that there's homework provided that's not, it doesn't make sense, right? It's just, you know, paragraph 6, blah, 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 and you're trying to find where the paragraph 6, and I don't see where you're asking, you know, it doesn't make sense, so. That to me it's like the little things, right? But that just shows how much our teachers are paying attention to the assignments that they're assigning. Right, and so, you know, the teacher just goes through and says, yes, no, 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 and it's back, but I don't know if there's any type of feedback loop. You know, other than just the parent, me as a parent saying, hey, you know, what's going on with this homework assignment?
I'm a big proponent of assigning homework if it's relevant and it's useful. I'm not someone who wants to assign homework for the sake of assigning homework. So now that I hear that, I'm gonna look into it.
Yeah, because I hope even in some point we talked about the SWOT, so, you know,
Yeah.
it's one of these things that I've noticed over the years, I don't know. You know, that have kids here, that experience that, but it's just, I'm not sure how plugged in
So,
or how intentional we are. and
Yeah.
how much that we give and how.
so with the English instruction side, I mean, it should be, we have curriculum, and it should kind of be based directly off the curriculum. Mandarin, I think that's kind of part of the issue, is we have we work with our consultants, and they've kind of developed curriculum guides for a lot of resources. So with that, that's a lot of things kind of like plug in, and it's not a comprehensive curriculum. That's one of the areas that we are going to be looking at this year. So if it is in Mandarin, or it's very clear, it's from a curriculum. That's one of the reasons why. we're looking at it.
When you say we need to.
Yeah.
Tiffany's responsibility.
She's gonna be doing it with my own.
Right.
Yeah, like she's responsible for the Mandarin program, I'm responsible for everything.
Alright.
So it's.
I should third grade.
So student, the reason I asked is, I taught upper grade, so the upper grade is the student's job to write it down. I write it on the boards for them to copy it in. So if they don't copy it, because I have parents ask me, you know, so, but for third grade, still, yeah, they should be.
So I met with actually a group of fifth grade parents about that topic recently, and a lot of what was practiced before is they have done homework packets kind of all the way through. And then now with fifth grade kind of being lumped in with the middle school model, going from one extreme to the other extreme. So we're gonna be revisiting that and then kind of being more intentional about that. Because copy down, but as you know, with the students, it doesn't just happen overnight. And so there has to be a transition process, and so we're going to be looking at that starting a little bit younger. Future. I thought I brought elementary figures too, so.
I recall Raymond telling me the same thing, fifth grade, sixth grade, and fifth grade. Like, hey, this is not like, it's not like it was before, right? And all of a sudden it's a lot harder, and I have to copy it from the board, and I have to take a little bit more responsibility for myself. I just told him, welcome to the party. I said, welcome to the party, buddy, you're growing up.
Yeah.
You're growing up.
We also want to have a
Given
TV
that
component too.
We
Right.
want to transition.
Yeah, you're growing up and you're transitioning to bigger piece of work.
All right, and so then it kind of comes into some parent feedback on the next page, and again, concerns about the fifth grade structure, what we feel for the students and families, kind of like we talked about too. So it's going to be an area that I'm going to be constantly watching, kind of moving forward. So we're going to be making some changes for next week, and then I'll be continuing to still observe and see what's going on. And some feedback.
What are you gonna say?
Well, it's with fifth grade, that instead of having a single elementary teacher, they have multiple teachers like middle school. And then on top of that, communication about homework, because the kids are younger and have multiple teachers, this is kind of like a lot all at once. So usually you don't get that until middle school, so either sixth or seventh grade, and usually the last grade level in elementary, that's a part of that grade level is that they teach them, they kind of prepare them for that. Well, it's kind of a quick change. And so with that, it's gonna be getting some extra support with fifth grade and just watching that.
Your kids are
40.
So they're both getting that. They're both getting both classes.
Yeah. All right, then we had our mid-autumn festival. Now we got great feedback from that, from families and the community, and kind of building off of that, we're kind of the early discussions with the PTO, kind of have that ongoing discussions about working on more opportunities for these type of events. That is an area of focus for this year, is building a community, and these events are a great ways. And then last thing, general concerns about bullying, kind of why I'm addressing it in coffee with the principal. Well, we can have to go, we had an incident between two students. It was an isolated thing, but you know, when we investigated, it was dealt with immediately. Consequences were assigned, but again, I can't go into detail because we do want to protect confidentiality for students. But unfortunately, when parents are upset, things kind of do get discussed. We do have WhatsApp, and so sometimes things get shared, that's not full story. It is on one perspective, and so I'm just trying to be able to communicate with families how we address bullying, how we, well, what is bullying, first of all, how we address incidents, and that we take this seriously. So I can tell you that we had a situation with clear discipline. So, and I just want to be able to communicate that out with families, give them an opportunity to ask their questions on it.
Say that again. Clear discipline.
Clear discipline. It's, I mean, like I
The way you
said,
said that.
you know, you think that's, it takes time, but when you make a decision, you have to do it. You know, we're not going to be a school where we kind of just talk about it and kind of just brush things aside. We will address it. Just want to make sure that the school is. All right, the last thing is just some general events coming up. So, same talk with the principal, we have student assemblies next week. So we'll be working with our community, committee to work on those assemblies. Character traits will be incorporated this time. We had our initial one, so then I know some parents were concerned about that. But the character traits will be covered there. And then our parent workshops will be focused on the management program updates. So there's going to be multiple sessions because they're more grade level specific. I sent out an update to families about that already. But that's something that we'll be having. And then on October 8th, we have a picture.
Thank you. I saw in Parent Square, you sent out a sort of request for volunteers to help support the librarian
Yes.
library.
Yeah.
Are you getting interest or?
From what I have seen now, there were 2 people who have already reached out to that. I just saw that recently, and just to help them. So yes.
Okay. Yeah, and we were hoping to connect with the PTO volunteer coordinators. We're plugged in there.
I think we have.
Yeah.
I think Ellen is also, I think Ellen and Tiffany have been working on getting some.
I just met with them on Monday, and they asked if I could send something else, so that's why I incorporated that.
Okay. Sorry, question. So we've worked at other schools, we've seen, I'm assuming they had libraries there. How was ours?
The library has a lot of books. So, yeah, we have a very full library. The struggle with library is always to make sure that we have appropriate staff, credentialed staff. With anything during the school day, has to have a credential or person in there for supervision. Other people can be in there to assist. And so right now we're going to be working on one of the things that tomorrow we'll be giving rosters to teachers to kind of go through, but then also having times for teachers to be able to bring the classes in. Teachers will have to be there, but how to do that without it being too many kids at once. So one of the topics was having 2 different groups. One group does kind of like a pre-planned activity, while one group looks for books, halfway through they switch. So but it's a very cool time.
Good resource. School.
Especially for the younger students who want to be a lot.
Good. How about the participation for the ELAC or the percent council?
So the ELAC, we actually got the staffing we needed, right? No, remember, yeah.
Work set on ELAC, school site council, we're having a.
School site council wasn't a lot. So that's why we, the one that actually wanted to do it, I believe it was 2.
Two,
So-
how many seats are we trying to
We took it's usually 1. So I'm going to be trying to push
push?
them. Yeah. Because that's something that we have to, do. It's not an option for us to show.
Yes.
We have to do it, but yes, we just need parents to run it.
We talked to the PTO
Not yet.
about,
No, it's all one of the things that I'm planning on doing, but with other things that I've got on. Taking my attention elsewhere. Topic that I want to do.
Doug, any questions? We give you an opportunity.
No, I feel pretty good with that update, and especially with just attention to the school community and continuing to emphasize a positive environment. So thank you. Keep your, keep your influence there because you alone can set the tone.
Okay, next item, financial update. Is Mr. Jones on by chance?
He is, and I made him co-host, so he should have the ability to share.
Good evening, Mr. Jones.
Hi, folks. Good evening. How are you all?
Good, good. We're excited.
Awesome.
The numbers.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Amy, should I just dive right into the budget since we've already, as I mentioned, we still have July and August open for audit purposes. So should I just dive in to discuss the budget
About the
at this
budget,
moment?
item number 1 on our agenda. So yeah, we can just dive in and talk about that unless the board has any questions about the check registers or anything else. All right, dive into the budget.
Awesome. So, folks, and let me share this first. So as we mentioned at the last board meeting that we were going to bring back a revised budget to update not just the change in enrollment, but also changes across the board. As you know, you have a new administration, so obviously it was, it's imperative that Dr. Kernan, get a really good feel for this year's budget, number one. Number two, make the changes that she feels are necessary to, get the school on better and solid financial footing. And again, as I've been saying for a year and a half now, we're on our way towards that, but this is a slow march, so to speak. And this budget, somewhat reflects that. It certainly will build upon the progress that we made last fiscal year, and we'll continue to do that going forward. What you're seeing now, hopefully on your screen, is just that revision to the budget. In this column here, I have the original budget that was approved by this board back in June of 2024. And in this column here, we have the updates in terms of the adjustments and changes to that budget. One of the things I want to highlight here really quick is the change in enrollment. We're up 20 students. I went back and I revised, and I wanted to be a little bit conservative on the attendance rate here. So I revised that down just 1% to sort of get us back in line. Oh, hi, cutie pie. Beautiful baby. Sorry about that. To revise down back to where I think, and I think this is more or less a place of comfort for us in terms of what the attendance rate will be. And then obviously the ADA here changes about 14 students. I did update the LCFF calculator, and one thing that I did notice that it drastically reduced down the state revenues. So the calculator that we used initially for this budget was released in the spring. I went back and I picked up the calculator that was released in the late summer here in August, and I used that to update these numbers. Obviously, and again, with any change at that level, I really don't control that, or I don't control that at all. So you can see here, there's a difference of about 153,000 in the overall revenues for LCFF, right? So that implies that there were some changes within that new calculator, that the state had revised down some of their expectations from the spring into the summer, obviously going into the fall. Overall, we show here not much change in terms of our federal revenues, as this school doesn't get a whole lot yet, right? And we're still in the process of working on this area here, which I keep in the budget, but I will point out that at some point this year, this will get approved, and we may not know necessarily what those revenues are until probably in the springtime when they do that second CalPADS pull to get the demographics. Hopefully it happens sooner But if it does, we'll drop that in and update the budget again. And I can't really speak to those dollar amounts because, and again, those formulas are based on your free and reduced, your unduplicated pupil count, etc. Overall, about a $2,300 increase. Most of that was just for your nutrition program. On the federal side, on the state side, I made some changes as well. During discussions with Amy and I, initially we had 255,000 budgeted here for the after school program that's related to this ELOP funding, but I revised it back down to the known amount, right? And I will say that because this will change again, but it won't change again until P1 is approved and certified in the wintertime. And obviously you won't see those revenues trued up until February when they make those apportionments. But I suspect that this will change again. It will be revised upwards, so that will bring in some more cash here for this. But for now, I did reduce it back down to the known amount that was certified back in June, which is this 188,299. Other changes is reflected here. Your special ed revenues went up about $11,000. Your art and music grant went up about $20,000. Net effect here is another negative $17,000. But I'm comfortable with where these revenues are as well in terms of being more on point. Number one. Number two, I know that, as I mentioned, the ELOP revenues will bump back up as well. So we should see a positive amount reflected over here in this column in terms of that variance later on. On the local revenue side, and again, this is based just on our conversations between Dr. Kernan and I, and you can see the changes here that we made. We did drop in the $75,000 from the Hoag Foundation. We did recognize, I'm sorry, from the K Foundation, the $50,000. We had the PTO giving, we revised that down to 50,000 from 75,000. And then obviously the Hoag grant committed 75,000 as well. And I believe we have received this amount here as well as this amount up here as well from the K Foundation. So we have received both of these amounts, and I believe the board did approve this at a subsequent meeting, either last month or the month prior. We did remove this $50,000 here, which was really for the gala. And again, it's not doubting the success of the gala. It's just being a bit more conservative to say, if we don't raise any money at all, what does the budget look like, right? And so obviously, if we do raise some funds from that, that will then just obviously it's just icing on the cake, so to speak. Overall here, we did increase by 50,000 just with those changes. And you can see our total revenues now of 7.3 million, down about 119,000 from 7.5 in that original budget. On the expenditure side, once we went back through all of the salaries and things like that, and again, this is, I believe, the place where there was a lot more movement in terms of expenses, or in the salary areas. And you can see the change here just in certificated salaries based upon what was originally approved versus what's currently there. And I have checked this myself personally in terms of the salaries that were agreed upon by staff, etc. A rough change of about 331,000 upwards. And again, I believe you guys are on a salary schedule that's probably more closely related to Irvine Unified, and obviously their salary schedule is a lot more robust than ours in terms of affordability. On the classified side, and again, you can see here, just following up on this with the movement of that. So overall, it was a plus $235,000 increase on certificated salaries, and a reduction of about 63,000 on the classified salaries as well. And you can see here where those movements took place in terms of instructional aides, and then as well in terms of classified support salaries. Overall, for benefits, there was an upward tick of about $47,000. One of the things that I did not change was this year, the benefits, because I believe this may have just been short up, and Dr. Kernan, I'm not able to see you, but I believe based on our last conversations, the open enrollment occurred, so everyone now should have at least some idea of what those benefits costs are going to be. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, so we have, open enrollment, I believe, ends this week. And then we should be able to kind of shore it up, but nothing changed in the types of benefits that we were offering from last year. So this should be a pretty good number.
Okay.
So, more specifically, once we go through a month or two of the new, benefits that everybody's electing now for the October 1st start, the new benefits.
All right, perfect. So overall, in terms of personnel expenditures, including salaries and benefits, we're looking at an increase of about $218,000. We did make some changes, obviously, down in the program areas here, and based on our conversations, you can see here where we made those changes in terms of increasing the curriculum support by about $46,000. We decreased some of the instructional software, and then these are somewhat related together. Here we had a lot more built in here for that, but obviously we increased more of this column, this line item here, and then decrease this one because it made sense, because a lot of that curriculum was either tied to some software that we've already purchased or included in the budget up here as well in this line item. No change here for reference materials, books, no change here in these categories. Office materials and supplies, we did revise this down a bit. And again, this is speaking to being mindful of, how much the school puts into, what I would consider things like paper, pencils, and materials that's used in the office, things like that. So that was revised down 15,000.
We also
No-
revised a little bit because PTO has graciously offered us money to pay for some of our teacher supplies. And so with that increase in PTOs helping to support us there, we were able to then have some cost savings on our ends.
And then lastly, down here, one of the major highlights here is the reduction in tech equipment. And again, I believe that the school has probably more than enough at the given moment in terms of tech equipment for students. As I mentioned here again, this is same here. Most of the furniture that's within the school has been provided by Irvine Unified as part of the Prop 39 agreement. So we reduced this down as well. So overall, a savings here of about 100,000 in this particular category for textbooks, curriculum, office support, things like that. On the operational side, so to give you a couple of things here, we did increase back this in one of the major highlights here. This is your insurance policy that covers your property liability, umbrella coverage, errors and omissions, and things like that. Based upon what I believe were the final offers in terms of what Charter Safe, I believe, is the company that provides that. When I checked it, it was about $120,000 for this year as well. And again, part of that, the school does have one or two claims or some historical claims that I suspect is causing this number to stay higher than we would really want it. So hopefully over time, this number here should come down once some of those claims have been adjudicated or time has passed in between. The length of time has passed in between. Our facilities rent, we decreased it back down to 412,000 because that's the agreed upon amount that we see in the Prop 39 agreement for those additional classroom spaces that are being offered by Irvine Unified. Not much has changed here. We did increase this amount here, and a lot of this is related to the after-school program in and of itself. So we increased it by about 15,000. And again, this is an area where Dr. Kernan has had some discussion with, oh gosh, every time I say their name, I forget it. Strategic Kids. And so we've increased that back up to what we think those expenses will cost. And obviously the EOP amounts, we're hoping that will offset this because it really should be almost a revenue neutral, or we at least try to make it revenue neutral in terms of the amount of revenues we get versus the output and expenses for the after school program. We have a amount in here for substitute teachers that has not changed. Fundraising expense, obviously we've,
Question.
Question. So
yes.
this 225 is strategic kids.
Not all of it. We do have some additional educational consultants, so we are, right now, we've negotiated 180,000 for strategic kids. But then we also have, U consulting
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
an educational for the Mandarin. And so it's not completely entirely all strategic kids. Strategic kids right now, we negotiated it down. It was 225. We negotiated it down to the 180 that we are projecting to get for ELO.
It's also parent supported. Parents are paying for.
Well. So.
Parents are paying nothing for strategic kids?
No, so if it is a student that qualifies for ELOP, so basically a student who is eligible for free and reduced lunch, as an English learner, homeless, foster youth, then we pay for that entire amount of strategic kids for those students. And so that's the 180,000. So we negotiated for those students, that we will pay their strategic kids because that's what we get for ELOP. If a student does not qualify under one of those criteria, then the parents pay for the program. So all of the rest of the students in the program, currently we have 70 students that qualify under ELOP. I think the program has 250 students in it. So all of the rest of those students who aren't the 70 are paid for directly. The parents pay directly strategic kids. So unless they're eligible for ELOP, it's directly from the parents.
But the 180 is a pass.
The 180 is a pass through of just for those 70
Yeah.
ELOP eligible students.
We're not paying anything out of pocket.
We're not paying anything out of pocket as of right now, because we negotiated.
Sorry, thank you.
No worries at all. Thank you. And thanks for the reminder on U Consulting because they are built into this category as well. Not much has changed elsewhere. Overall, we did reduce down, again, as I mentioned, the fundraising expense, field trips, though that amount remains the same. I did reduce down our borrowing because Dr. Kernan and I are certainly on the same page when it comes to how quickly can we get out from under the borrowing from Charter Schools Capital. As of today, we have, and I did have a conversation with them today. They were supposed to send me something for me to share with the board today, but it didn't happen. But I will make sure that when I get it, I'll send that over to Dr. Kernan and we'll have a conversation about what's remaining open in terms of borrowing, which would be payments in August and September, and we have not borrowed beyond that. And we're doing our absolute best not to go back to that fountain and drink from it. So I did revise it down by about 134,000. So we should not see any more in terms of borrowing if we can help it. And in the case that we do have to go back to borrowing, it will be just out of sheer dire need in terms of our cash position, in which we're monitoring very closely, and I'll share that with you in just a second. Overall here, you can see here the reduction in total operational expenditures of about 215,000. Obviously, our other outgo here for that borrowing, we reduced that by 134,000. Overall, that puts our net income now at 423,000, which is, again, as I mentioned, is a bit more conservative because of the reduction in the ADA percentage, plus the reduction from the ELOP funds, things like that. But overall, we're anticipating net income of 423,000. And obviously, if something changes we will bring that back to the board. But we're hoping that if we stick to this budget, and again, I can't promise you that we won't do a budget revision again. It's only prudent for us to do that anytime there's significant events that will impact this. We will make sure we do that as well. Just taking a look.
I'm gonna just make one comment. We really did make this budget probably much more conservative than it actually is going to come out being. Right now, we have a 97% attendance rate, but I really wanted to drop it down to 96 because we've never actually hit 97. So that would result in, over $100,000 if we can keep our attendance rate at 97, as well as, if we don't borrow, that interest on long-term debt would actually be less than the 200,000. So we really made it almost a worst-case scenario, so that we make sure that we don't go any worse than kind of try to make sure that we don't have to go any worse than this. But we are hoping that it will actually be more, in the end, it will be able to have it actually be more positive than this. But we wanted to kind of start almost with a worst case scenario instead of a best case scenario.
All righty, whoops, I think I jumped too far ahead of you folks. And again, here, you guys have seen this one here, the personnel in terms of the overall FTEs, in terms of staffing, 29.25 FTEs overall for certificated, another 18 in terms of classified support, and how that shakes out. Overall, your FTE totals are 47.25.
Delano,
Yes.
there may be some questions on the first part of what you did,
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
the budget versus the updated budget. So does anybody have any questions they want to pose?
What is non-educational consultant? 5801. Pages 3.
I'm sorry, did I hear someone say something about one of the 5,000 series? It sort of broke up.
5801.
Non-educational consultants.
Oh, yeah. So this one here, and again, this is another line item that we have built in for any outside consulting services that are related either to program or program support. We have that built in. I believe you did spend some funds in this area last year as well. So we kept that amount in there. But obviously, as we go through the year, hopefully we won't need to spend that amount. But this is usually categorized for some type of program or educational support, whether it's inside the classroom or outside the classroom.
A little bit more of this. So we had quite a few non-educational consultants, a consultant to help us write the LCAP, a consultant to help us write the charter, a couple of other consultants that were built into this is another place where we're being very conservative and left it in, although we have taken away most of those consultants and taken most of that in-house. So this was kind of a left-in placeholder from last year, just to see how much we would need, but most likely I think we've spent maybe less than $2,000 in this category. Some of it was left over kind of paying consultants. I think we had Kismet, that was like $900. But we're expecting this shouldn't really go much past that, like 2,000 that we've already spent.
Yeah, and if I could just add to what Dr. Kernan just mentioned, obviously the original budget was developed prior to her arrival, and there were obviously agreements and things that were in place there. But again, my hope is that some of those categories that we have some budgeted items in or expenditures in, that we're not going to realize those expenses, right? Or they will be extremely reduced. Primarily looking at that one, we know for sure that there's probably about $9,000 in there that will not come to fruition in terms of an agreement that was made prior to that, we're no longer going to use.
So I have a few questions, Delano.
Yes.
One, the 4430 non-capitalized classroom furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one, non-capitalized furniture. So I saw in some of the classrooms, we got new desks. I was under the impression that those were provided, but
Those-
we
yes.
paid for those. I don't know.
No, so the reason that we took a lot of the money out of this category is because, like I said earlier, Irvine Unified has been very easy to work with. So they have pretty much anything we've asked for, the new classroom furniture, office furniture, things like that. They've been providing to us free of charge. So a lot of this that we had in, from the previous budget, we really haven't needed to use. And
Yeah,
so that's why we
okay.
did take that number down quite a bit, because everything for the new classrooms, the new offices was provided from Irvine without us having to pay.
So we may not even need.
We may not need
what's
any of it.
allocated.
But we, again, be conservative, we left some of it in just in case we have to buy anything,
Yeah.
but most of that probably we will not.
And then the food student meals,
Mhm.
this is a pass-through?
This is, so this is for our, student nutrition. So when we purchase the meals, then we get a reimbursement from the state for those meals.
Is it dollar per dollar? 'Cause I'm-
Not necessarily, so
Yeah.
sometimes we have some over ordering, so we wanna make sure that we have a meal for every kid. If you
Yeah.
walk into the staff lounge right now, you'll see kind of a box, because today the kids didn't really like the white cheese on pasta on sauce. In the beginning of the year, it's hard to gauge that. So we won't be reimbursed for every single meal
Yeah.
this time, because unless a student takes the meal, we then have to pay for it ourselves. So that will start, evening out as the year goes on, and we figure out what the kids like from this new vendor, what they don't like. But we always have a little bit of excess that we usually have to spend, because we want to make sure that we have enough meals for everyone, which usually results in a couple of extra meals being ordered every day.
Okay, yeah, so it looks like maybe we get revenue of about 220 grand.
And then
and
we,
we have expense.
270. There's a portion that is state derived, and then a portion that's federal derived, and I have them highlighted here. This is about 270. And then down here, we have expenditures for that at about 254. And again, to Dr. Kernan's point, because we're using a private food vendor or a food vendor that's not, like the district or something like that, those costs tend to fluctuate, and depending on the meals that are purchased, things like that. So really, the food services or the food revenues, it's not what I would consider a revenue generating stream, because it's really just, if you break even on it, then you're winning in that sense, right? And really and truly, even at the one of the provisions of that is that you cannot carry over no more than 3 months worth of revenues for the lunch program in any single year, right? So it's really just a break even type of endeavor. Does that make sense?
Yep. And then
Awesome.
equipment lease and rental, is that like the copier?
yeah,
Yes.
copier funds.
All righty. So wrapping up, we went over the personnel and where we stand with that, and I think we're probably good. I don't anticipate Dr. Kernan hiring someone new or anyone that's not already in the budget in terms of any movement with new personnel. We've captured most, if not, actually we've captured all of that. So hopefully, if we're replacing someone, that's already built into the budget. Or if someone is leaving, we probably won't replace it unless it's absolutely necessary. So on the cash flow itself, one of the things, as I mentioned here, is just overall how revenues flow to the school. And let me get back down here. shrink this down a little bit. But one of the things that I wanted to just sort of point out to you is just how revenues are derived and how they're generated. As you can see here in July, we don't get any revenues per se, right? It's just completely blank. And as you can see here, even in August, received roughly about 459,000. Without output in terms of salary and benefits and things like that, we're looking at, half of this already being used for personnel costs, right? In that way. But as we go through the year, you can sort of see here where those upticks in revenues occur in terms of your LCFF and what we have here in terms of other revenue streams and how we anticipate them flowing into the school. Down here on the expenditure side, and again, this is just evenly broken out based upon where we anticipate some of those. Obviously, some of these expenditures, we shift up in terms of things that that you purchase early in the school year, and they sort of flatten and disappear towards the latter part of the school year in terms of like the curriculum and things like that. The furniture or anything like that, computers, technology, things like that we may purchase. Part of our problem is down here though, right? Because if you can look and see, and I'll sort of make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. But month over month, you can see here where we run a deficit really and truly for a great majority of the school year, right? And as I mentioned before, there's really only a few months within the school year that your revenues outpace your expenditures, right? And those usually happen at the certification of P1 in February and in March. And here I have that built in February and in March, right? And then towards the end of the year as well. But we continue to monitor cash flow and we'll update this accordingly. And as I mentioned, I have not closed out July and August just yet because we have to keep those open for maybe another week or two until I get all the documents that the auditors want. Then I'm going to close those months. Then I'll be able to sort of update this if I need to. But as you can see here, we're positive as we go along. Then obviously we'll have to address this month here, November, December. We want to make sure that we have a rock solid plan for that in terms of looking at our actuals long before that, making an adjustment to what we anticipate bringing in. And if we need to, and again, if we need to, and I'll stress that these will be the months here that we may need to have a conversation with Charter Schools Capital in terms of any borrowing. But we're going to try to push this out as far as we possibly can and survive as much as we possibly can until the last minute if we need to borrow. And again, that's a huge if we need to, right? Because we're anticipating hopefully that we can mitigate some of those expenses that we discussed, some of those not coming to fruition, and then we'll have a much better idea of where we are cash flow wise as we get into December, January, February, things like that. But I'm anticipating adjusting this before we get to November, so that way we can take a look and make sure that we'll have enough cash to meet our obligations in these 3 months here. This is the budget as we are presenting, and we're asking for approval on this revised budget. And obviously with the caveats that I mentioned earlier, barring any unanticipated new expenses or changes in revenues and things like that, we will sure to bring that back, update the budget and bring that back to the board. As we go forward, obviously next month we'll start to bring our regular monthly financial reports to the board so you can sort of see how we'll perform. Obviously we'll more than likely we'll be bringing July, August, and September at the October meeting for you guys to review, and then obviously any updates to the cash flow will be presented there as well. Short of that, I think I've answered most of your questions. I'll take any if there are further questions or additional questions on anything that we've presented thus far.
I think cash flow also is one of the reasons why we really do need to make sure that going into future years, we have a strong enough reserve so that we don't have to worry about going into the negative, because there are always more expenses at the beginning of the year, but less revenue.
Yeah.
And so we need to be able to have the reserves to be able to float through to October, without having to borrow in the future.
So the net income here is projected to be 423,000.
Correct.
And for some reason, does anyone remember, we're talking about $1 million at the end of this school year? Discussion of this before.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I thought at one point we were talking about $1 million, being around $1 million in net income at the end of this school year.
No,
Not recently, but like several months ago. Was that ever in the picture? I thought it was gonna be higher than the 400K.
so at the meeting in June, we had net income projected to be 546. Right now, our fund balance is deficit 800,000, give or take. Somewhere in there as of the year close. If you add back in the net income of 80,000 from 23-24, plus this right here, we're pulling ourselves out of that $800,000 deficit fund balance wise, right? But no, I don't think we've ever were at $1 million in net income. It's probably in the out years, Brent. If I'm only showing you 1 year here because we're only approving this budget, but in the out years, there are some years there that has projected, $1 million, 1.2 million in terms of net income in those years when we're much more stable with a higher enrollment, so to speak. And I can certainly bring that back next month and show you that, just so that way we can sort of have a conversation around what the out years look like.
What is the accrual figure that you have here of the 730K?
Where do you see that?
Where we went in cash flow.
That's after June,
Net income, that's net income,
after June, net income.
that's a net income after June.
I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Net income, basically it's after line item 7699, about 4 rows down. And in the back.
On this sheet, on the cash flow,
The cash.
Net income.
the net income is up here.
No, there's a net income on the cash flow, down at the very bottom. It's the last line on the full cash flow. And it is 739.73 for our accruals forecast. It's the second to last column. Last line of the cash flow.
On the last line of the cash flow?
Not the last line of the actual cash flow, not where you have the cash. Not at the summary, but of the full cash flow, you have a net income. If you look under other outgo, total operational expenses, and then net income on the cash flow.
Oh, this here.
If you go all the way over to the second to last column, 739.73.
Oh, yeah, this is just a forecast, right? Taking these actuals in. But this is the number that we're looking at here is this. This is just a forecast for the accruals.
Because it's the 730 is the total we're taking in, but then we have to take out what we have already.
We have to factor in the expenditures as well here. So this is just an accruals. This is going to change each time I update the cash flow. So you will see that this number will change.
Okay.
But this is the net income that we're projecting here, this 423.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the number that we have our eyes on. Is that 423?
So a question on the budget. I know you had done the adjustment of the 510 for the original versus the 530, and you put it in the new LCFF calculator.
Mhm.
Did you punch the 510 to see what that number actually would have been? It's changed from what's here. Is that right?
Yes. So if you're going back, I believe you're talking about this page of here.
So it takes two things into account. One, we did increase students by 20 students, but we also decreased our projected ADA percentage from 97 to
Yes.
96. So
Yeah.
it counteracted each other. And then
But there was a net improvement. So it went from 490.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Brett, so there's an instrument that we use to project the LCFF revenues, and I don't control that. It's derived from the state based upon their how do you say here, their estimates in terms of certain factors that they were putting in there, right? So this is from the spring.
Yeah.
These numbers here are from the spring in this original budget, and this is the new calculator that they released in August. So I thought it would be prudent to use the newest version of the calculator, and these are the revenues that it's spitting out based upon our enrollment, based upon our ADA, based upon our percentage rate of attendance, et cetera. So it did change these figures here, but that's because I'm assuming at the state level, they revised down some of those projections from what they were in the spring versus where they are now.
Yeah, my question is, did you take the 510 and put that into the LCF calculator based on the August?
No, I just went with the 530 because at that point, then this number here is not, from my perspective, is not relevant
It says
anymore.
we shouldn't have increased enrollment. That's the story that
Yeah.
this document tells me. I don't know if anyone.
Well, not necessarily, because think about it this way. At some point in time, right? The higher ADA helps you year over year over year, right? So if we were at this lower ADA here next year, or at some point in time when they're looking back and saying, hey, what was your ADA for certain revenue streams that gets updated based on prior year ADA, this would have impacted you, right? But this is going to help you.
But I think answering your question, Brett, if we were to put in our 530 into the calculator, the August calculator,
It would be less.
have generated a
lower,
lower
the 510.
revenue.
Yes, it would be less.
And then the.
That's what I was
spring
curious to know,
calculator,
because
We can plug it in
Yeah,
and just see what that is, but I'm guessing because usually, unless we have a really good budget here at the state, the spring calculator will project a higher amount than if you go in and use the budget. We didn't have a huge budget increase this year in California. So most likely if we put the 510 into the current calculator, it would have spit out and it did everything exactly the same with the 97% instead of 96, the 510, it would have spit out a lower number for our LCFF and inland property taxes then.
so
Then it would have been, yeah.
that may be helpful, just a note, it may be helpful to add that column here, right? Because you have two different periods of time. Because my question is, well, do we just enter into a new tier and that tier just bumped us down?
No,
Right.
it had to
So-
do more with just the change in the way.
The
that-
calculation,
that-
right?
Mhm. Yes.
it-
So yeah, I can run that calculation, just grab these numbers here from, our estimates from the spring, dump it in a new calculator, and you'll see the difference there in terms of what it would have been had we stayed at these numbers here.
You wanted to show an improvement,
Yeah.
because it is an improvement
Yeah.
from what we would have, because we would have had even less revenue if we plugged in everything the way we had it before. Any other questions for Delano? All right, thank you, Delano.
Thank you, folks. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. It'll change.
All I heard was wait till November.
We're just
That's what I
being secret.
remember.
We meet every week and we go through everything, so I can't guarantee that we won't change it again, but but we're trying to each time change it at least either for the better or to be a little more conservative so that we make sure that we're not getting into those same borrowing issues that we've had in the past, because I don't like paying interest ever. Yeah. We don't have borrow.
Hopefully.
So that's why we keep looking. So even though we keep changing things, we're trying to do it to make sure that we're being as accurate as possible.
Okay, so we need a vote on this, correct?
Yes, you can
Approve,
move on, yeah.
yeah, approve revisions to the 2024-2025 IAA budget based on changes to enrollment expenditures. IAA has revised the 2024-2025 budget to better reflect current projections. No impact to the LCAP goal and applicable, funding source and applicable, budget financial impact not applicable. It's recommended that the board of directors approve action item A. Is there a motion? Thank you, David. Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you, Felipe. I will do roll call vote. Molly,
Yes.
Felipe,
Yes.
I'm a yes. David?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Miller? Absent. It passes. Moving on to the next item, approve 2024-2025 revised IAA master plan for English learners. The IAA master plan for English learners has been revised to include updated reclassification procedures as well as updates to ensure that it accurately reflects the current IAA English learner program and is aligned to state and federal laws and educational code. LCAP goal action, goal 1, action 8, funding source, not applicable, budget impact, none. Any comments?
So basically, every couple of years, we update our EL master plan and our special ed master plan. Just looking through for any changes to legislation. One of the biggest changes that came through this year is that we no longer LPAC test our TK students. It's actually illegal to give them, because before they were getting the kindergarten LPAC, it was much too high for 4 and 5-year-old. And so the state has decided that we aren't going to test our TK students. So that was one big change that came out of that this year, as well as just kind of tightening up our reclassification procedures to be in line with what the state recommendations are for reclassifying English learners. So for the most part, our programs are very similar, but it was really just updating those to accurately reflect what's in what came out of the legislation this year for those two areas.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, it's recommended the board of directors approve action items B. Is there a motion? Molly, second. I'm happy to second. Roll call vote. Molly,
Yes.
Felipe,
Yes.
yes. David?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Thank you. Miller? Absent. Passes. Next item, approve 2024-2025 revised IAA master plan for special education. The IAA master plan for special education has been revised to include updates to ensure that accurately reflects the current IAA English learner program.
Be special education, sorry.
That it reflects the current IAA special education program. Correct?
Yes.
And is aligned to state and federal laws and educational code. LCAP goal, action, goal 1, action 9, funding source not applicable, budget impact not applicable. It's recommended the board of directors ratify action item C. Comments?
So this is similar to the other one. Our special education plan hadn't been updated since the school was first opened. And so, some things have changed as far as how we address special education. And so we just wanted to make sure that that was updated to just really much more accurately reflect there hasn't been a lot of changes in, the ed code or the law. It was more to reflect, how we're actually providing those services. Some of the service providers that we're using, making sure that we're, utilizing service providers that are, state approved. So it was more just to kind of accurately reflect how the school has changed over the years and how we're providing services.
Just around the description here, and it seems, the language is basically all copied from,
we just have to.
it's especially.
It should be special ed,
Special.
yeah, not English learner.
So I have a question. How did we check, right? How do we spot check? Figure out what's compliant, what's not?
So usually we'll have whoever, so for the special education, master plan, it would be Joe going through and proofreading it. And then Grant and I, will go through. We'll also look to see if when the last time it was revised, and then go through, our policy updater to see if there was any, policy updates. Same thing with the English learner. Just to see if there was any legal updates, that we need to make sure to update in those. So we use, the updates to ed code to kind of see, the last time this was updated was in 2021. So we just looked to see what had changed, legislatively between then and now. And then basically Joe, because he oversees the program, kind of reviewed it for what we're actually doing on the site. So, so there's a couple of different people who are involved, but it's, starts with the person who is in charge of that program. So, so for the EL, it was, Ms. Brown kind of started it, and then we went through and did the legal updates, and then, Mr. Fernandez, especially.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Felipe. Is there a second? Thank you, Molly. Roll call vote, Molly,
Yes.
Felipe,
Yes.
I'm a yes. David?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yes.
Thank you. Miller? Absent. Passes. Item D, approve board policy 5123, promotion, acceleration, retention. This board policy outlines the procedures for promotion or retention of students. LCAP goal action, goal 2, action 1, funding source not applicable, budget impact not applicable, board policy requirement mandated, board policy per ed code 48011, ed code 48070, ed code 48070.5, 5 CCR 300. Thank you for including all of those.
I just wanted to repeat them all.
Further comments?
So this board policy, is one that actually Grant and I, really found necessary at the beginning of this year, because we do have students that come in, either from especially it affects students that come in from outside. A lot of students will come in from outside, not having been accelerated at their previous school, so like moved on to a higher grade, but come in and want us to move their student on to a higher grade, and we didn't have any policy that really outlined the procedures for that. And so really this policy helps us in a lot of different ways. It kind of codifies how we promote students out of kindergarten, and some other kind of legally required things. But more importantly, it also gives us a policy that outlines what types of criteria are necessary if you want to advance a student or retain a student, and showing that we do use multiple measures, multiple different ways to assess whether a student is ready to either be accelerated, or if a student needs to be retained. So it's really outlining a much more consistent process for making those decisions for students.
So when you say retain, a student doesn't achieve the level of curriculum in the classroom for that year,
So it
they
could,
could be retained.
so they can be retained. So, we don't like to really retain students, because, a lot of studies have shown that retention doesn't work, especially in upper grades, better in lower grades. But we do every now and then have a student who's just not ready, academically or, socially, emotionally to move up to the next level. And they will be retained in that, current grade level, but it does happen on a very infrequent basis. But we want to make sure that it's done using data, and using all of the information that we have. So that's kind of what's outlined in this policy, instead of it just being kind of on a whim of, we.
Yeah, why not?
I don't think he's ready.
Why not? Yeah.
Or we
Doesn't
take
feel right.
feedback.
It doesn't feel right.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that it's really, based on looking at the whole student and how well they're going to do if they're promoted.
Some benefit.
Yeah.
Do we have instances of this in the past of promotion or retention?
We
that we
have,
know of?
I don't know that we have any students who have been accelerated to another grade here. We may, but I haven't seen any paperwork on that. But we have had a few retentions.
And were those done without process? I mean,
I think there was a process, we just didn't have anything really, a written out process, so I can't tell you, like, at least this, now in the future, if someone was asked, why is that student retained? We have a whole criteria and, there will be paperwork on that student kind of stating exactly why. I'm sure there was a process in the past, we just don't have that
There's no
written down
documentation,
on
there's no documentation of what that process was,
what.
or how many students it impacted.
I can pull the data on how many students it impacted, but we don't have like a set policy on how that retention was done.
We're talking younger grades, is that younger grades?
It's usually done in younger grades. I don't know if all of ours were done. Sometimes there will be, different reasons for retaining in upper grades.
I can think of a couple.
But there's a lot of research
about
that,
that.
the retention in upper grades is actually pretty detrimental to students.
So in our school here, in the past 3 years or 4 years, have we seen anything, in students? again?
We have.
We have.
We have, like we were just talking about, I just can't give you the specifics on why those students were.
Were retained but not accelerated.
I haven't seen anything so far on students being accelerated. That is not to say that it hasn't happened. I just haven't come across any paperwork on it.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion? Thank you, David. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Felipe. Roll call, Molly,
Yes.
Felipe,
Yes.
yes, David?
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Miller? Sit. Okay, next item, item 7, executive director report.
So I talked a lot tonight, so I'm gonna keep it short, but I just want to thank the board for the study session and the great conversation, kind of looking forward and making some future looking plans. Also, I want to thank everybody for an amazing Mid-Autumn Festival. Last Friday, we had tons of people come to the party, and great performances from our students. Our middle school students did a great job of emceeing and running the different booths. PTO's meal was definitely the hit of the night. I think the line never went down until like 7 o'clock at night. And then of course, the Delgado cotton candy extravaganza.
I think I got a lot of votes. I got a lot of votes talking to the people.
Buying votes with cotton candy. No, I think it was a great event, and we are super excited to look forward to more events in the future. We're working with our music teacher now to look at a winter event, and I was talking with Tiffany, kind of how we can infuse some Mandarin and English into that as well. So, so we're just excited. Our first event went so well that we're just excited about what's to come in the future.
Thank you very much. Item 8, directors' reports. Board directors, you would like to say something?
I also really enjoyed the Mid-Autumn Festival. It just seeing the family coming together, kids were happy. And everybody's just kind of like Christmas. So I look forward to see more of an event like that. And there's just so many. Yeah, yeah. And I also appreciate the study that today, the brainstorming, help us to think about the future. And thank you, Fred, for bringing us. Old and future. I really like that. I think sometimes we so much focus on what we have, but the kids are, students are the leader of the future. So, yeah, that was a great time.
Okay. Well, first of all, today I'm very, very pleased to see we have a long-term, strategic discussion involving the key administrative stuff. Very glad. It's actually the first time. Yeah.
That's our first time.
Yeah, first time ever since I was involved.
Well, you're in the future.
Yeah, that's very good. It's because it's the process, not just the board level, but also help the administrative, key stuff. And have them think about the future. And sometimes you hear the feedback from them and yeah, help our positioning. It's great. I like that. And so, I mean, but this is a process really, because it's so important. And we should be, we are very prudent coming to a solution or decision. I'm glad that we have this very productive discussion, and I think we're on the right track. And, we look forward to even more detailed market report and the suggestions, proposals we can carry it next step. And that's number one. Number two, this is actually the first time I miss the Spring Festival. I really miss it because today, when my daughter, in her new school, she brought some mooncake. Some of the teachers said, "What's that?" She was so disappointed. Victoria was disappointed. I said, "Yeah, if you stayed in, you wouldn't have that. Sure, you couldn't have a party."
I had a lot of mooncake today.
Yeah.
I think I'm like 4.
So, yeah, we really miss that. Yeah, hopefully next time I'll be able to join. And also one thing, this is a separate note. Victoria said, can you as a board member later request like a yearbook with my picture on that? Because, I wanted to keep that. I said, I'll try.
Included in the yearbook.
At least one picture. At least one picture.
See if we could like throw it in.
Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to say, the Mid-Island Festival is probably one of the best ones that we've had so far, certainly the largest one. And so it was just a big success all the way through. I wasn't as tired as I normally am, for these things. So yeah, it was a lot more help, a lot more people involved. I don't think that maybe the planners who was planning the PTO would have realized that we were gonna have that much. They knew it was gonna be more, but I don't think they realized just how much.
I think
more.
almost everyone.
It was kind of, yeah, I think everybody came. Who didn't come? I think,
Yes,
yeah,
Friday.
I think David, you were the only one that didn't come.
I think so.
I don't even know, yeah.
And along with vendors, we have more vendors this time and stuff like that, and so I'm sure that, following. Yeah, it was great. The only feedback that I got was from the kids that volunteered, and I'm gonna call they're the leadership. They're the leadership. team.
It was a variety of middle school, but it was.
Yeah, they said they didn't get that's the feedback I got from them, that they didn't get good direction, what they were supposed to do. how they were supposed to participate, what they were supposed, so their level needs seemed to get everything that they needed, so that was some feedback. But other than that, it was great. It was good.
Thank you. Doug?
Sorry, I had to mute. I looked away for a second. Was that our vote?
No, this is for you to provide any comments you'd like to for the Board of Directors report.
Yes, just glad to see Amy settling in now. It takes a while along with our principal and team locally here, but thank you for not losing sight of the strategic plan and what our growth will be in coming years. So I'm greatly appreciative that you set the early meeting for us so that we keep that at the forefront. So thank you for leading from an executive level.
Thank you, and thank you for joining. Also, we'd love to see you. Thank you. So from my perspective, yeah, I definitely wanted to thank PTO for a wonderful Mid-Autumn Festival, and thank you to the school for supporting them in that process. Dr. Kernan, thank you very much for coordinating the study session tonight and for including the team that you did. I thought that was valuable. It really, really helped not just be like there to answer questions that we have, but actual provide the feedback. So that's good. And that's good learning for us, right? And future ones too, so we can all incorporate everybody's perspectives. And I know it's something that we probably all wanted to do during this process. And you just have to set a block of time to do it. I just wanted to thank you for continuing to listen, make adjustments, work with the teams, work the principal, the staff, and help to build a community. I mean, in essence, you know, we've grown so much larger. We have all these different growth areas for us, and we're talking about middle school and expanding, and it's all very exciting. We're all just trying to put our arms around the expansion that we're just experiencing at this time.
No more borrowing.
So thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for Sheila. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time. Thank you to the board for your time.
Thank you.
Really, really valued. And you can see we're helping to shape the future of the school. So thank you very much. Okay. Next item 9, community input on non-agendized items.
We have none.
Okay, thank you. Item 10, adjournment. It's recommended the board adjourn the regular meeting of the Irvine International Academy Board of Directors on September 17, 2024. Is there a motion? Thank you, David. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Felipe. Roll call vote, Molly?
Yes.
Felipe?
Yes.
I'm a yes. David? Yeah. Doug?
And yes.
Yes. And Miller? Absent. Okay, motion passes. Meeting adjourned at 8:45.